Hi guys, hope you can hear me. Yeah, good evening. Thank you for joining the live stream. Let me just check some comments and then we'll start the live stream. Today we have an interesting discussion. Spicy. Abhijit Mitra and Kushal Mehra are Marxists masquerading as right-wingers, ignoring them completely or using them only when needed is the right way to go, or best just staying away from them. No, actually they are not Marxists. They in fact reject decoloniality because they think decoloniality is Marxist. So there are nuances to that. Evening Dada M. Shastri, evening. Abhay, yeah, today the live stream topic that we are going to discuss, you were obviously live when Kushal Mehra himself was discussing it. So today we are going to discuss some excerpts from the book India, that is Bharat, some excerpts from a book I'm reading currently by Amartya Sen, incidentally, and Kushal Mehra's video itself, and see what are the merits in his arguments against decoloniality. Dada, did you watch the video I shared on your... No, Ninar, I didn't see. In which post did you comment on? Good evening to all new viewers. So what's the initiation process like? There's no initiation process. আপনার গোফ কোথায় হারিয়ে গেছে? আরে মেইনটেনেন্সে এত সময় যায় রে, একটু একটু করে কাটা ফাটা বহুত ঝামেলা. Kushal is obsessed with cast topics, yeah. Carl and Sem exam hai, nice. Okay. So the topic is whether decoloniality is just a sham, whether it's a Marxist, regurgitated Marxist nonsense to defend the evils of a society, or there is some merit to it, and can decoloniality be used to, let's say, think of your society on your terms, your culture, your country on your terms, not on the premises or the lenses provided by the former colonizers. Now, there are great arguments on both sides, frankly, and because you can come up with many counter arguments immediately, that who is really the colonizer, how far back should we go while counting the colonizer, and some might argue then that anyone who was looking at you as the outsider, who did not want to assimilate, is the colonizer, not necessarily everyone. So Parsis aren't the colonizer, but then whose views should be taken into account now? Because decoloniality says your culture needs to be viewed from your lens. So does that mean then the evils of Taliban need to be justified or something? Or is decoloniality for different places different? Okay, which is the main argument provided by the defenders of decoloniality, that अरे तालिबान का डिकोलोनियलिटी अलग होगा, अफ्रीका में डिकोलोनियलिटी करने से अगर स्लेवरी वापस आ जाता है तो वो उनका प्रॉब्लम है, देन देयरफॉर दे माइट नॉट डिकोलोनियलाइज देयर माइंड्स एनीवे. तो अफ्रीका का तो ये प्रॉब्लम है कि वो डिकोलोनियलाइज भी नहीं कर रहे हैं, कॉलोनियलाइजेशन को ब्लेम भी कर रहे हैं, मगर उनका ट्राइबल वॉर्स भी ख़त्म नहीं हो रहा है, अफ्रीका इज स्टिल इन शैम्बल्स. सो देयर आर डिफरेंट arguments that are applicable in different points of time in different land masses. Okay, that's the main thing. So, but the place where we are going to start from is, or at least I'm going to start from, is that I'm not married to any idea. I don't think any idea is perfect. Some ideas are mostly good, some ideas are mostly bad. So with a frank and honest mind, we are going to look at the merits of Kushal Mehra's arguments against decoloniality, because I believe that he is let's say an honest actor in this conversation. He wants what's best for India. But let's see, is he wrong about this procedure, which some of us also think that is probably a great way to do good for India. And if there is something in fact bad about decoloniality, can we help filter it out with Kushal Mehra's ideas itself? Okay, with that, let's start. Nina is saying the name of the video is Intro to Works of A.K. Saran by Hali Kalyan on the channel called Center. Oh, I see. Okay, A.K. Saran is an older scholar whose works are very similar to decoloniality. You should check him out. अच्छा. ऋषभ सिंह, अफ्रीकन्स तो आजकल सबकी हिस्ट्री को क्लेम वो एक्चुअली ना अफ्रीका के अफ्रीकन्स नहीं करते हैं, वो यूएसए के अफ्रीकन अमेरिकन्स करते हैं, वो एक प्रॉब्लम है. बिफोर वी स्टार्ट, let's just start with just one page of excerpt from J. Sai Deepak's book. Okay, this is one of the most important sections, sort of demarcating between what is post-colonial theory, what is decoloniality, what is post-modernity, okay, and what is modernity. This is sort of one and a half page excerpt that will basically cover this entire concept. So J. Sai Deepak writes in his page 29 of his book India, that is Bharat. Wait a bit. Okay. Oh, by the way, guys, this is the signature I got from J. Sai Deepak in our meet and greet that happened in Kolkata. Here, a lot of you obviously have already bought the signed copies anyway. तो कहाँ गया भाई? So, J. Sai Deepak writes, one school of thought the quote-unquote modern school, believes that Columbus's voyage 1492 में जब वो अमेरिका पहुंचा, नॉर्थ अमेरिका, that was and must be seen as a quote-unquote glorious and heroic achievement that marked the beginning of the Christian West's quote-unquote destiny to quote-unquote liberate non-Christian indigenous societies from their wretched existence. This is now J. Deepak is saying this is the modern school, and he is actually quoting some scholar. But I don't think this is entirely fair, because the people who are saying that the modern school says this are Marxists themselves. Okay, because like Kushal, Mehra, Abhijit Mitra, them being modernists, they wouldn't say that that 1492 wala journey is a glorious thing. It was so great for the indigenous people. Okay. But the problem is here, do we listen to self-proclaimed modernists like Kushal Mehra and listen to their arguments on their face value, or do we go to the theorists of modernity, for which we will have to go to like 200-300 years back? Because that is what Kushal Mehra also does when he criticizes decoloniality. While criticizing decoloniality, he is bringing out the flaws in the arguments of mainly the founders of the decolonial school, not J. Deepak specifically, although at the end of his live stream, he did discuss bring out some specific excerpts from J. Deepak's book as well, which he thinks is questionable. So let's see. The second school of thought, or the so-called postmodern school, is seen as a response to Europe's claims over modernity. Okay, that is the first resistance that begins. That Europe was saying that चलो हमने तो बढ़िया modernity कर दिया, अब आ जाता है post modern school कि देखते हैं modernism के बाद क्या आता है. तो it was seen as a response to Europe's claims over modernity and rejects the so-called grand narratives woven around Europe's modernity. However, this school's opposition to modernism is largely in the realm of culture. The third school, namely the post-colonial school, in which you can count basically all of our Marxist historians, Shashi Tharoor, everyone, okay? Their view is that yes, British invasion was very bad, British colonization was bad, but a lot of good came out of it. I don't think we entirely disagree. But the point is, nothing that happened before that colonization was also good, okay? That is the one major flaw I have, that is not something exactly J. Deepak says, but that is what I have noticed, that post-colonial schools people always say that yes, colonization was very bad, but whatever was there before colonization, that was also bad. So now let's have a blank slate in front of us, and let's see how we can conjure up a completely different new society, okay? Born out of the ashes of colonization, okay? But interestingly, post-colonial school theoreticians and academics never count Islamic colonization as colonization, nor will they ever include Muslims in the definition of settler colonialism. You open the post-colonial studies pages of any big university anywhere in the world, and you look up the definition of settler colonialism, nowhere will you find Muslims mentioned there, okay? But even if we consider that Muslims are maybe not the settler colonizers here in India, because they are after all not the majority, though majority-minority has nothing to do with colonization, even then, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan should absolutely be considered settler colonialism, right? Because they came here, colonized, lived here, didn't return. That is supposedly settler colonialism. But the post-colonial school theoreticians never include them in settler colonialism. So there is that is a huge problem with the post-colonial school. The third school, J. Deepak writes, namely the post-colonial school, which enjoys a significant overlap with postmodern thought and even draws from it, they also reject the universalizing claims of यूरोसेंट्रिज्म. यूनिवर्सलाइजिंग क्लेम्स का क्या मतलब है कि जो उनको लगा कि ये अच्छा है, ये अब इमीडिएटली सबके लिए अच्छा है, हर जगह के लिए अच्छा है. तो इसमें एक प्रॉब्लम आ जाता है कि यहीं से फर्स्ट काउंटर्स ऑफ डिकोलोनियलिटी बिगिन, दैट ओके, आर यू सेइंग दैट किलिंग अ पर्सन फॉर नो रीजन, that is not universal? Are you saying that is even subjective? If Eurocentrism or European laws say that murder is wrong, are you going to say murder is subjective here? No, that is not the case. The case is where even their flaws are universalized, because everyone will have flaws. The problem is with universalization. The problem is not with what is being universalized. Okay, that is the counter from I would say from my side. as someone who is pretty much a fan of decoloniality, not entirely maybe. So, rejects the post-colonialism rejects the universalizing claims of Eurocentrism, albeit in the political realm. However, it uses the very same tools as the colonizer, okay? Post-colonial school uses the same tools as the colonizer instead of deconstructing and questioning colonial presumptions. कि अच्छा जिस रीज़न से जिस तरह से वो देखते थे कॉलोनाइज सोसाइटी को और जिस रीज़न से जो चीज़ों को खराब बोलते थे, उनमें कोई डिसएग्रीमेंट नहीं है पोस्ट कॉलोनियल स्कूल का, मॉडर्निटी स्कूल का, पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म स्कूल का. यही प्रॉब्लम है. फॉर इंस्टेंस, while the post-colonial school focuses on the local, it tries to universalize the local, thereby falling prey to the same universalizing tendency of colonialism. ये problem है, universalizing problem है. In other words, the post-colonial school certainly changes the content of the discussion, but not the terms of engagement or the framework of the discussion, because they have imbibed the European penchant for universalization. ये problem है. क्योंकि यूनिवर्सलाइजेशन जब करोगे तो उनका गलती खामखा तुम्हारे ऊपर यूनिवर्सलाइज हो जाएगा. द लिमिटेशंस ऑफ द पोस्ट कॉलोनियल स्कूल अमॉन्ग अदर थिंग्स लाई इन इट्स इनएबिलिटी टू सी एंड कॉम्प्रिहेंड द कंटिन्यूड कॉन्टेम्पोररी इम्पैक्ट ऑफ कॉलोनियल स्ट्रक्चर्स इवन आफ्टर डिकोलोनाइजेशन. तो अब कॉलोनियल स्ट्रक्चर्स का फिर से काउंटर आर्ग्यूमेंट आ जाएगा कि अच्छा, अगर क्या सब कॉलोनियल स्ट्रक्चर्स प्रॉब्लमेटिक है? सब कॉलोनियल स्ट्रक्चर्स प्रॉब्लमेटिक नहीं है, क्योंकि आज के दिन में हमको ये मानना पड़ेगा कि हम ये नेशन स्टेट कॉन्सेप्ट के बाहर नहीं जा पाएंगे. ओके, किंगडम विंगडम वापस नहीं आएगा. ओके, एक ट्राइब एक जगह हैंडल कर लेगा, ये नहीं होगा. तो अगर नेशन स्टेट कॉन्सेप्ट में रहना है, जो कि खुद एक वेस्टर्न कॉन्सेप्ट है, 1642 में ही उसका आविष्कार हुआ था, तो उसको चलाने के लिए कुछ ना कुछ कॉलोनियल स्ट्रक्चर्स हमको रखना ही पड़ेगा, क्योंकि वो द रूल्स वी हैव अग्रीड अपॉन आर the game is Western, so the rules will be Western. Unless we are kicking out the chess board completely, the game board completely, we can't get rid of colonial structures completely. The fourth school, namely the decolonial school, akin to similar to post-colonialism, challenges European universalisms, particularly in the political realm. It too believes that Columbus's voyage marked the beginning of one of the most repressive, bloody, racist, and genocidal chapters ever witnessed in history, that led to the extinction of several cultures and critically wreaked havoc on nature on an unprecedented scale. Now here, this argument actually needs to be, we are going to be very detailed about this today's live stream, okay? तो ये जो argument है, इसमें ना 50% गलत है, 50% correct है actually. I'm not going to be too emotional about it. तो क्या है कि ये जो कॉलोनाइजेशन, कोलंबस का कॉलोनाइजेशन वाज रिप्रेसिव, ब्लडी, रेसिस्ट, जेनोसाइडल. ओके, ये करेक्ट है, मगर ऐसा नहीं है कि कोलंबस आने से पहले वो सब के सब इंडिजिनस नेटिव अमेरिकन ट्राइब्स अपने आप में बड़े मज़े में रह रहे थे. वो सब के सब अपने आप में जेनोसाइड कर रहे थे, इंस्लेवमेंट कर रहे थे. कोई युद्ध में हार गया तो उसको उठा के ले जाओ, रेप कर दो, जिंदा गाड़ दो, ऐसे मतलब लटका दो कहीं पे. ओके, तो और या फिर उनका ज़मीन हड़प लो. ठीक है, तो एक ट्राइब के जगह का कॉलोनाइजेशन कर ही रहा था. तो यहाँ पे फिर प्रॉब्लम कोलंबस के साथ क्यों है कि अच्छा, अलग रेस का आदमी आके काहे किया यहाँ पे. सो दैट इज आई थिंक अ वेरी वीक आर्ग्यूमेंट. सो वी कांट बी so loud in our criticism of colonization just on this aspect, because they were doing those same things to each other as well. This is not necessarily applicable to India. Okay, इंडिया में तो वैसे भी ब्रिटिश आके ऐसे कोई जेनोसाइडल कुछ नहीं कर पाए, मगर हमारे लोग भी बहुत जेनोसाइड नहीं कर रहे थे. मुस्लिम्स वर डूइंग जेनोसाइड्स ऑफ इंडियंस, बट इंडियंस वर नॉट डूइंग जेनोसाइड्स ऑफ ईच अदर. ओके, कास्टिज्म जितना भी हो, ब्राह्मण कभी जाके किसी का जेनोसाइड नहीं कर दिया. ओके, द सेकेंड पार्ट इज एक्चुअली ट्रू. The second part is I think what stems from Abrahamic way of thought, but that didn't start in 1492 as well. तो ये चीज़ एक मिनट, wreaked havoc on nature on an unprecedented scale. तो ये wreaking havoc on nature on an unprecedented scale, ये 1492 में ही नहीं शुरू हुआ, मगर जो thought processes के वजह से colonization हुआ था कि चलो ज़मीन हड़प लो और मतलब और सेटलमेंट करवाओ, इसके लिए बहुत पेड़ पौधे काटने पड़े, तो वहाँ से नेचर का माँ बहन होना शुरू हुआ. और उसके बाद से तो इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन जब 1900s में 1800s में हो गया, तब तो बहुत घपला हो ही गया. हाउएवर, वेयर द डीकोलोनियल स्कूल डिफर्स फ्रॉम पोस्ट कॉलोनियल थॉट, ओके, इज इट्स आइडेंटिफिकेशन ऑफ द एलिमेंट ऑफ कॉलोनियलिटी. कॉलोनियलिटी नाम का जो कोई चीज़ है, ये पहली बार डीकोलोनियल स्कूल लाता है, विच अकॉर्डिंग टू इट कॉलोनियलिटी इन्फॉर्म्ड द यूरोपियन कॉलोनाइजेशन. ओके, कॉलोनियलिटी नाम का एक चीज़ का थियोराइजेशन होता है डीकोलोनियल स्कॉलर्स के हाथों, कि कॉलोनियलिटी नाम का एक चीज़ है जो एक थॉट प्रोसेस है. वो थॉट प्रोसेस was leading to European colonization, which began with the so-called Age of Discovery. Okay, according to decolonial thought, European coloniality gave birth to the cultural complex of modernity, quote-unquote modernity, quote-unquote rationality, apart from the quote-unquote modern categories of religion and race. Importantly, according to the decolonial school, post-colonialism gives the impression that the colonial mindset or consciousness ended with decolonization. ओके, ये पोस्ट कॉलोनियल स्कूल का कहना है कि जब कॉलोनाइजेशन खत्म हो गया, वो सब भी कॉलोनियल थिंकिंग भी खत्म हो गया, जो कि हम जानते हैं कि इज नॉट रियली करेक्ट, नॉट करेक्ट रिमोटली, when in fact it has survived decolonization. Okay, that coloniality has survived decolonization and continues to impact decolonized or so-called independent societies. This is where we end the excerpts from this book. Now, before starting the live stream, we are going to discuss just one beautiful excerpt from Amartya Sen's book, which is incidentally in Bengali. I bought it in Bengali because I wanted to improve my Bengali vocabulary. So unfortunately I can't read out the section. But just today only, coincidentally, I read two great chapters. These two chapters were so far the best chapters in the book. So the chapter is called Poschim o Poschim Birodhi, meaning West and anti-West. Okay, so there. Amartya Sen brings out one or two great arguments. Okay, let me show you. Yeah, so this idea that when West started, when basically the colonized societies gave up on their progress in a way, and saw that West was doing all the progress in economics and science, the only thing we still had was our cultural wisdom, religious wisdom, okay? Or let's say adhyatmikta, okay? And that is when ISKCON, etc., transcendental meditation, yoga, all this goes to the West, and the West laps it up. And in a way, the West and the East, the colonized societies and the beneficiaries of colonization, they sort of have an unwritten understanding between them, that both agree, therefore, that yes, we are kind of good at science, the West, and you all are kind of good at the spirituality realm, okay? So you keep up with spirituality, we will do science. And East kind of agrees, okay? Now, Amartya Sen here argues that, अरे भाई, तुम्हारे पास्ट में जो मैथमेटिक्स और एस्ट्रोनॉमी साइंस के जो इनोवेशंस थ्योरी, एटलीस्ट इवन इन थ्योरी लेवल में करके रखे थे, वो तुमने काहे छोड़ दिया? वो तुमने छोड़ के सिर्फ आध्यात्मिकता तुम्हारा रेल्म है, तुम्हारा प्रावेस है, ये समझ लिया. Then you are being unfair to the people who did those progress in science, maths, and astronomy, etc. And therefore you are kind of playing into the premises set by the West. The West said, like one guy, Amartya Sen quotes, I think someone called John Mill or something other Mill, okay. He writes that India is a very bad society, bad country, everyone is trying to screw everyone, they have no concept of law, justice, everyone is insanely stupid, and it is as bad as, he names some other South Asian countries, etc. But the point is, Amartya Sen mentions that guy had never been to India. He does not know one single Indian language. So he has read some, I guess, some newspaper articles maybe sitting in England, and has decided that India is a bad society. Now, Macaulay and all others later on, all of them agree that book written by John Mill, where he says that India is a horrible country, they all agree that book is their second best work of history in England up until that point, okay? And that book was sort of a Bible for anyone who was coming to India. It was compulsory reading for anyone who was coming to India. Okay, interesting. See. And Amartya Sen is pointing out, then you are therefore basically playing into their hands. You are admitting that तुमको साइंस नहीं आता है, तुमको सिर्फ आध्यात्मिकता आता है. नहीं, तुमको दोनों आता है. तुम दोनों का हक मांगो और तुम दोनों को लेकर प्राउड हो. ये अमर्त्य सेन नहीं बोलता है, बट दैट इज द डायरेक्शन ही इज टेकिंग. But now you see where is the fault of people like Amartya Sen, that since they are against ideas like decoloniality, Amartya Sen and Kushal Mehra I don't think would have any disagreements. But you see, their theories don't set the ball rolling. Their theories are good just in the realm of theory. Now, when did the ball get rolling? When did we start saying that no, we are not going to be happy just with spirituality and adhyatmikta. We are also great at science. One could argue that when we started saying that Mahabharat had Pushpak Viman, nuclear bomb, etc., either that led to us having sort of a reawakening about our scientific past as well, or saying those sorts of nonsense was a sign that India was now beginning to lay claim on the glorious past history of its scientific discoveries as well. Okay, तो यहाँ पे पुष्पक विमान और महाभारत का न्यूक्लियर बॉम्ब इज जस्ट अ हैप्पी साइड इफेक्ट, बिकॉज आइदर दैट लीड्स टू इट, दैट दोज काइंड ऑफ आइडियाज सेट द बॉल रोलिंग, or it is a sign that the society is now ready and they are saying that we had past glories in science and economics as well. हम सिर्फ आध्यात्मिकता से हैप्पी नहीं रहेंगे. ओके, तो therefore you see that brings to my mind that this idea about linguistic pride and regional pride is also flawed for that very same reason कि लिंग्विस्टिक लाइंस में स्टेट डिवीजन कितने साल पहले हुआ? हाँ, कुछ डिकेड पहले हुआ. उसके पहले तो लिंग्विस्टिक लाइंस पे स्टेट डिवीजन था ही नहीं. बंगाल, बिहार सब एक साथ था. तो कॉलोनाइजर ने आके तुम्हारा स्टेट डिवीजन किया भाषा के बेसिस पे, और उस भाषा के बेसिस पे आज तुम लिंग्विस्टिक प्राइड मरवा रहे हो. तो लिंग्विस्टिक प्राइड या फिर लिंग्विस्टिक आइडेंटिटी तुम्हारा तो एकमात्र आइडेंटिटी नहीं है. तुम्हारा तो बहुत सारे आइडेंटिटी है. तुम्हारा प्रोफेशन का आइडेंटिटी है, तुम्हारा कास्ट का आइडेंटिटी हो सकता है, तुम्हारा एज का आइडेंटिटी है, तुम्हारा जेंडर का आइडेंटिटी है, तुम्हारा लैंग्वेज का आइडेंटिटी है, ठीक है, या फिर तुम्हारे फैमिली के हिस्ट्री का आइडेंटिटी है, तुम्हारी इकोनॉमिक प्रावेस क्या है तुम्हारे फैमिली का, उस सब का आइडेंटिटी है. सिर्फ लिंग्विस्टिक का छोड़ के अगर समझ लो ये सारे जो तुम्हारे आइडेंटिटी है, ये आइडेंटिटी के बेसिस पे अगर स्टेट लाइन्स डिवाइड होते, ओके, कि सारे शाक्त एक स्टेट में रहेंगे, सारे शैव एक स्टेट में रहेंगे, ओके, या फिर सारे शूद्र एक स्टेट में रहेंगे, सारे ब्राह्मण एक स्टेट में रहेंगे, या फिर सारे आईटी वाले एक स्टेट में रहेंगे, सारे म्यूजिशियन एक स्टेट में रहेंगे. तो क्या आज तुम 40 साल बाद अच्छा तो म्यूजिशियन प्राइड का मूवमेंट चलाते, म्यूजिशियन पक्ष हो या ब्राह्मण पक्ष हो या फिर शाक्त पक्ष हो? ओके, तो लिंग्विस्टिक प्राइड का बेसिक प्रॉब्लम यह है कि तुम ग्लोरीफाई कर रहे हो कॉलोनाइजर का प्रेमिस, वो जो कि उसने तुम पे थोपा, तुमने उसको एक्सेप्ट कर लिया और उसका अब प्राइड मरवा के तुम नेशनल यूनिटी का माँ बहन कर रहे हो. One might argue then, a linguistic pride person might argue then, why should we identify even with Hinduism or Hindutva then? I would argue because that is the biggest group identity and it absolutely, provably leads to national cohesion, national unity, which is the foremost priority for me personally, and I think should be for anyone, and I don't think any honest linguistic pride person would also argue that it is not their goal. They would argue that yes, national unity is also my priority, linguistic pride is also my priority, but I am saying linguistic pride, regional pride is necessarily antithetical to national unity. Okay, let's start now with I'll check out some comments and then we will discuss Kushal Mehra's live stream directly. Abhay is saying even medicine, though Ayurveda is primitive when compared to modern medicine, but still it was something for the time. Right, very true. Mind science like yoga, nidra, meditation, absolutely. Why go to Vimana and all when we have scientists like Aryabhatta, Sushruta? Exactly, that is the great point. But you see, one could argue that the fact that you are now saying that अरे भाई हमारे पास तो आर्यभट्ट सुश्रुत था, इसका ट्रिगर पॉइंट शायद वो पुष्पक विमाना का चुतियापा ही था. ओके, और 50% ये भी पॉसिबल है कि people writing about Pushpak Viman and nuclear bomb was a proof that the society was now going outside the realm of just being happy with Adhyatmikta and saying that no, we were great at science as well. There's a lot of good culture and literature attached to it. Here to learn decoloniality and a great friend of J. Sai Deepak, you can't let go of linguistic pride. I think it depends on how much it is detrimental. If you say Kushal is community, then either you are trad or extreme right wing. I am not. Okay, let's see. Let's start the live stream where Kushal directly discusses this.
super chats, or you guys send the UPI donations. So I have my phone ready with me, and you can email me the question or tweet it at me after your donation has come through, and I'll answer your questions. Questions can be anything. I don't care in a monologue. It doesn't have to be about the subject of discussion in the podcast. So I was like, मैं वो किया, what do I recommend to people? If a lot of times people will be like, अरे आप बताओ हम क्या पढ़ें? So if you do want to read it, you can refer to a book or three essays that I think will help you. So when it comes to a book, I would recommend you to read On Decoloniality. That's the name of the book, On Decoloniality, Concepts, Analytics, and Praxis. This was co-written by Catherine E. Walsh and Walter Mignolo. Catherine writes the first half of the book. Walter writes the second half of the book. That is one. Then another paper I would recommend you to read is, I'm going to read the title of the paper because yaad rakhna mushkil hota hai. And by the way, when I'm looking at the right is because my screen is on the right and my light and camera are straight on. That's why. So don't get confused कि बार बार यहाँ क्यों दिखता रहता है. That is the reason. So the other, by the way, and all these
Guys, for those of you who don't know, we have actually discussed this in a past live stream, but Ninad is pointing out, and therefore I'll clarify it once again. What Ninad is saying here is actually very important and very true. Hindi imposition actually killed Hindi. The beautiful Hindi that Yogi Adityanath speaks, Sanjay Dixit speaks, that is not the Hindi we commonly know, right? And the Hindi imposition that Bangla Pakho, Tamil Nadu people are pissed off about is not even real Hindi. I have a big problem with that Hindi itself. I don't have a problem with the Hindi Yogi Adityanath Sanjay Dixit speaks. It's 80%, 90% Bengali, pure Bengali, okay, with just variations in the pronunciation, okay. So, and when was this, unironically, when did this Hindi get killed? There was a famous atheist communist Congress guy, something A. Zahir, okay. He was the one who was one of the biggest proponents of using Hindi as a language to sort of bring together Hindus and Muslims, okay. And he said that this is one language where the amalgamation has kind of already happened, and therefore let's push Hindi. Therefore, let's impose Hindi on all over the country so that the elements of Sanskrit and the elements of Arabic Urdu, they find a home together, and Hindus and Muslims live happily ever after because both of them can now understand each other's language to somewhat level, okay. And how did that imposition actually happen? Like one example is in Doordarshan, they would say now Hindi news and then other news, okay. All other languages were other languages. Hindi was mysteriously the main kind of language, okay. It was deliberately done by Congress to impose Hindu-Muslim friendship, but that actually killed Hindi.
Names are written in the description of the podcast. So the other paper that I'll be reading from a lot today is Epistemology and Domination, Problems with Coloniality of Knowledge Thesis in
Probably Sajjad Zahir. We discussed it in our live stream where we discussed the paper by Venkat Dhulipala.
Latin American Decolonial Theory. That is one. Another paper is by Dr. Robin Dunford. He's from the School of Humanities, University of Brighton. And that is called Toward a Decolonial Global Ethics. That is another paper. Then another paper that I would recommend is written by Hele Haker or Haker. I don't know. See, look, I don't know these pronunciations because these are not native names to me. This is from the Department of Theology, Loyola University, Chicago. And this paper is called, it's an essay, it's like a 30-page paper, Towards a Decolonial Narrative Ethics. So these papers are there. Obviously, other than that, you can also, refer to maybe, a decent definition which is there in the William and Mary, University about decoloniality. Surprisingly, actually, the Wikipedia page on decoloniality was not that bad. I mean, I was hoping it to be an absolute disaster, but it was not that bad. I mean, the references and everything kind of were, I don't know how to say it, shockingly decent. Otherwise, Wikipedia is a cesspool of mediocrity. Also, I don't know how long this session might end up being, because I'm going to try and read, and if it crosses 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour, it does. What I'll try to do is I'll keep the Q&A for 1 hour. So no matter when I stop talking about it, it depends how many super chats are there and how many UPI donations are there. I'll try to answer them and I'll close. So if it is there for an extra time, I'll go till that time. But the Q&A limit will be 1 hour. Now, having said that, let's go step by step, right? So the first question, very naturally, anybody would ask me is, what is decoloniality, right? because my talk is going to be about a very specific thing that I say I see possible moral and ethical concerns in this epistemology, right? So the meat of the talk has to be about what concerns I have with it. If the concerns are solved, ठीक है, no problem at all. But before that, at least basic तो आपको पता होना चाहिए कि decoloniality क्या है. So I'll read 2-3 definitions from 2-3 sources. So first what I'll do is I'll read from On Decoloniality by Mignolo and Catherine Bosch, because it's very important, so that I laid the groundwork how they think. It's always important to read what they say. So this is, I think, page 16 of that book.
Now, it's always important to read what they say. I don't think it's entirely correct, because one of the core propositions of decoloniality is that every indigenous society charts their path towards a decolonial future. So it's not like a religion where we are reading the primary source. और primary source के लिए कैथरीन ई वॉल्श ही पढ़ना पड़ेगा. I would argue, if you are into decoloniality, you don't have to read any particular theoretician. You don't have to read Mignolo or Catherine E. Walsh. I think India, that is Bharat, J.S. Deepak's book does pretty much a great job. Okay, it's not like a religion कि primary source जाके उनसे पढ़ना होगा.
Where they say
why? Because the main proposition of decoloniality, one of the propositions which I can't defend everything that decoloniality argues actually, which is why I have some respect for Kushal Mehra in this aspect. But one of the things I can respect is that decoloniality is very much against universalizing. तो अगर डिकोलोनियलिटी वाले खुद बोल रहे हैं कि हम तो यूनिवर्सलाइज नहीं करना चाहते हैं, हमारा ये जो आइडिया है ये सब के लिए हर जगह पे एप्लीकेबल है, इसी तरह एप्लीकेबल है, ऐसा नहीं है. अगर वैसा नहीं है, देयरफॉर इट्स नॉट नेसेसरी दैट यू गो रीड कैथरीन ई वॉल्श ओनली.
Decoloniality has a history, her story.
Nina, yes, that is the main thing. Every opponent of decoloniality refuses to acknowledge that. J.S. Deepak keeps saying that we are talking about a hybrid future.
Story and praxis of more than 500 years. From its beginnings in the Americas, decoloniality has been a component part of trans-local struggles, movements, and actions to resist and refuse legacies and ongoing relations and patterns of power established by external and internal colonialism. What Sylvia Rivera calls colonialism's long duration and the global designs of the modern colonial world. So this is one thing. So basically what they're trying to say is decoloniality, or this whole concept, has always been there for more than 500 years, and they trace it to a very specific point in history. In general, if I was to look at the general definition, and this is the definition provided by William and Mary, this is the Decolonizing Humanities Project. This is a subset of that. So what do they call decoloniality, right? Yeah. I mean, if you want, I can share the page also. If you want, why not? I'll just share it. It's better. It's more transparent that way, right? So this is William and Mary. This is their Decolonizing Humanities Project. I'm not saying this is the only one. I'll read further iterations and quotes also, but I'm just trying to give you as much variety as possible. So what is decoloniality? Decoloniality refers to the logic, metaphysics, ontology, and matrix of power created by the massive processes and aftermath of colonization and settler colonialism. This matrix and its lasting effects and structures is called coloniality. More plainly said, decoloniality is a way for us to relearn the knowledge that has been pushed aside, forgotten, buried, or discredited by the forces of modernity, settler colonialism, and racial capitalism. So let's try and understand what they're trying to say here. So what they're trying to say here is that what happens is when the colonizer came to a nation, the colonizer tried to impose its own worldview and destroy other native knowledge systems. So basically, indigenous knowledge systems become inferior, and what they believe becomes superior. So through that logic, they say there is something called Western science, by the way. That's not my view. That's the view of the decoloniality folks. They say science is Western. But let's read further. Decoloniality.
No, this Western science idea is a bit more ambiguous. मतलब किसने पहले ये किस पे थोपा था पता नहीं है. I think it started with West claiming that science is ours, we are great at science, and the East saying that we are great at spirituality. And then the next generation of Easterners say that therefore science is Western. ये Western science है और spirituality Eastern science है. वहाँ से ये चुतियापा शायद शुरू हुआ था, and दोनों तरफ ही इसमें गलती है.
But they say, see, what do they say? But that's very different. The book says completely different things, but the definitions are different, which is very interesting. Decoloniality is not a means to reject the scientific, medical, and social ethical advances of the modern era, to quote. It is rather a way to explore colonization, settler colonialism, racial capitalism, particularly as it grew out in full racializing force with the enslavement of Black Africans, modernity, and most recently neoliberalism and neocapitalism, and the ways in which they have displaced an array of modes of living, thinking, and being in our natural world. Decoloniality reveals the dark side of modernity and how it is built on the backs of others that modernity racializes, erases, and or objectifies. Therefore, decoloniality is not a singular thing. It is a method and paradigm of restoration and reparation that depends on context, historical conditions, and geography. Therefore, as a method, it aspires to restore, elevate, renew, rediscover, and acknowledge and validate that the multiplicity of life experiences, culture, and knowledge of indigenous people, people of color, and colonized people, as well as to decenter heterosis normativity, gender hierarchies, and racial privilege. Decolonial approaches, methods, and movements seek to disrupt colonial and settler colonial logic and the seeming naturalness of racial capitalism. The methods and practices consider differences in ideas, social practices, histories, identities, and beliefs as part of a myriad of means of production of knowledge, but also we understand that producing knowledge and living it are not separate. We seek to learn and make visible the connections between knowledge, social practices, and social action. So, this was one definition. Now, I'll read a few other lines. So, decolonial thinking, you know, as per Mignolo, I think this was 2008, only 2000, sorry. It is the recognition and implementation of border gnosis or subaltern reason. So border gnosis comes from border thinking, which is a concept in decoloniality, which I'll explain later. Subaltern reason, I don't need to explain what subaltern reason is to all of you. Subaltern reason is basically, how do I say it? Basically, of this, the subaltern means the one who are suppressed, and they have their own reasoning. Apparently, there is subaltern reasoning also. Okay, then
Yeah, and when it comes to subaltern politics or so-called pro-subaltern conversations politics, the famous book that Does the Subaltern Speak, and Gayatri Spivak wrote an entire book and in the end concluded that no, the subaltern does not really have a voice. But now you see we have a president subaltern, a subaltern prime minister, an entire voting bloc subaltern, who are being called the uneducated people who are sending our country back to 12th century. तो तुम डिसाइड करो कि सबाल्टर्न का वॉइस सुनना है कि नहीं. सबाल्टर्न को बोलना भी है, बोलना चाहिए, मगर सबाल्टर्न को वही बोलना है जो मुझे ठीक लगता है. ये प्रॉब्लम है पोस्ट कॉलोनियल स्कूल का. ये प्रॉब्लम डिकॉलोनियल स्कूल का नहीं है. मगर अब डिकॉलोनियल स्कूल को हम ये बोलने नहीं दे सकते कि अच्छा तो तब सबाल्टर्न जो बोल रहा है सब ठीक बोल रहा है. ऐसा भी नहीं है. मगर पोस्ट कॉलोनियल स्कूल का ये मानना है कि सबाल्टर्न जब तक अपनी इकोनॉमिक प्रॉब्लम्स का बात कर रहा है तब तक ठीक है. गरीब अमीर का बात है तब तक ठीक है. सबाल्टर्न का वॉइस बहुत ज़रूरी है भाई. कल्चर पे आ जाए तब तो नहीं. तब एथिज्म सब सर्वोपरि.
Quijano or Cuyano, I don't know how do you pronounce it. I'm going to call it Quijano again. Basically is a means of eliminating the provincial tendency to pretend that Western European modes of thinking are in fact universal ones. So what is interesting is what they don't explain is what is Western and universal modes of thinking. They never clarify that. They just leave it very absurd. So if you pinpoint and say, okay, is
in defense of decoloniality, it needs to be left absurd. It can't be anything other than ambiguous in this case, because this is a larger framework way of saying it. Okay, broadly speaking, कि वो अगर कोई चीज़ वेस्टर्न है तो हम उससे थोड़ा दूर रहेंगे. तो एग्जैक्टली क्या क्या चीज़ वेस्टर्न है, कि कौन कौन चीज़ को हम वेस्टर्न बोल रहे हैं, उसके लिए तो पूरा का पूरा उसका हिस्ट्री पढ़ना पड़ेगा. अच्छा ठीक है, कि अगर मतलब साइंस या फिर कोई एस्पेक्ट ऑफ साइंस ये वेस्टर्न है कि नहीं, इसका पूरा हिस्ट्री हमने कहाँ पढ़ा है. अब वेस्टर्न मॉडर्निटी वाले ने तो हमने बोल दिया कि हमको सिखाया कि है कि ये सब कुछ वेस्ट से ही आया है. और अगर कुशल मेहरा वाले या फिर विवेक देब रॉय, राजीव मल्होत्रा, दे रिसर्च हार्डर एंड दे फाइंड नहीं भाई ये तो यहाँ से ग्रीस गया, ग्रीस से इन्होंने वेस्टर्न बना दिया. तो क्या वेस्टर्न है, इसमें एम्बिग्विटी होगा ही, दोनों साइड से ही होगा, क्योंकि एवरीवन कांट बी हिस्टोरियंस. And I would request you guys today, especially, that please stay on till the end of the live stream, because one of the best portions of Kushal Mehra's video is in the end, because fantastic questions came in. And we will discuss the comment section as well. Two very important comments are at the top of the video, which we need to also analyze.
Is this a problem? They'll be like, I never said that is a problem. It's like that. So, I mean, now let's go to the active movement itself. So if you ask people, right, so what decoloniality is or how this theory was developed. So as per the paper written by Paul Anthony Chambers, which is epistemology and domination, which I mentioned in the beginning. Latin American decolonial theory, because this is pretty much developed in Latin America. This whole school and this whole epistemology is all Latin American. So Latin America may developed and propagated by Aníbal Cuyano, which was 2007. She wrote something very significant, Malton Mignolo in 2011. Enrique Dussel. Oh, they have written before and after that too, but main thesis that people have focused on. Enrique Dussel, 2008. Ramon Grosfoguel, 2013. Santiago Castro Gomez, 2005. And Boaventura de Souza Santos, 2014. These are, very well known writers who have dabbled in decoloniality. Now that I have at least read many things about what Latin America and Latin American theory is done. Now here's the thing. Mignolo, from what I remember, has visited India too. He's an interesting guy. And he's the main guy that most people go, him and Cuyano. Basically, these two are quoted the most in decoloniality.
What Kushal just said, I will read something very relevant to that context from Desai Deepak's book again, okay? Listen to this paragraph. Just one small paragraph, just half a page, okay? This is very relevant to exactly what he said. This is sort of a counter-argument. Interestingly, decolonial scholarship seems to have emanated from Latin America, which has contributed significantly to the understanding of that thing called coloniality and the response to that thing called coloniality. In fact, the better part of the scholarship largely revolves around the Americas, which includes North America, South or Latin America and the Caribbean, followed by Africa. ये सब जगह से decoloniality के scholarships आए हैं. One would have expected Asian countries to lead the charge on this front, given that the continent is home to living civilizations and indigenous cultural systems that have survived several forms of colonialism, not just the European variant. लेकिन इन्होंने क्यों नहीं किया? क्योंकि कुछ लोगों ने मान लिया कि हमसे तो साइंस नहीं हो पाएगा, हमारा तो आध्यात्मिकता प्रवास है, और बाकियों ने समझ लिया कि नहीं, हमारा देश में सब कुछ खराब है, चलो हम थोड़ा इंग्लिश पढ़ के नौकरी लेके बाहर चले जाते हैं. In fact, the continued survival of these living civilizations makes them prime targets of coloniality, that thought process of coloniality in its present form. And what is the present form of that thought process called coloniality? That is Western imperialism. And this makes the Asian voice all the more important from the standpoint of currency. Now, what is this Western imperialism as a thought process called coloniality? Okay, क्योंकि Western imperialism का मतलब तो सिर्फ ये नहीं है कि maybe you can argue that it's not just that USA is going around bombing places. Okay, so USA has not bombed India, but we have still fallen prey to USA's culture, right? That may or may not be deliberate. That is not my concern at the moment. What I'm saying, or what this school of thought could argue, is that वो तुम्हारे दिमाग में घुसा क्यों? तुमने क्यों मान लिया कि LGBTQ बड़ी आइडिया है? ओके, लड़के आइदर एकदम चूतिए गांडू होंगे या फिर बहुत बड़े हरामी है. ऐसे नैरेटिव्स तुमने क्यों मान लिया? ये है तुम्हारा कॉलोनियलिटी, because of which you gave a blank slate, a vacuum which got filled up by Western imperialism. Now, I have a little bit of a problem with this term Western imperialism because it sounds like a deliberate thing. I don't think it was all deliberate. I think it was Western liberal arts doing their thing and their artists imbibing those ideas among themselves and making movies on that, which we found great on our own because of our own mistakes. It was not a deliberate thing to destroy Indian society. And yet, Asia is not at the forefront of decolonial scholarship, which could indicate, what does it indicate? A deep-seated, continuing and unconscious coloniality in Asian societies, notwithstanding thus, even though they have survived with their cultural systems. This, as we shall see, is attributable, iska blame kisko de, is attributable to the predominance of post-colonial thought in Asia and the Middle East, especially Bharat and Palestine. Desai Deepak is saying that ये blame हम post-colonial school को दे सकते हैं. उनके वजह से हमारा decoloniality properly नहीं हुआ. Also, the literature that exists on Asia, in relation to coloniality, from a decolonial perspective, even where it presents a subjective and contextual view of the Asian experience with coloniality, appears to imitate the work of the Americas and Africa. अब यहाँ पे अमर्त्य सेन कुशल मेहरा वालों का बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगा क्योंकि ये वर्ड सब्जेक्टिव और कॉन्टेक्चुअल यूज़ हो गया है. अब यहाँ पे इमीडिएटली प्रश्न आएगा ऑब्वियसली, देयरफॉर इज सती प्रथा जस्टिफाइड बिकॉज इट्स कॉन्टेक्चुअल टू यू? इज इट सब्जेक्टिव कि हाँ सती प्रथा कहीं पे खराब है, कहीं पे गलत है? नो, that is something a society will have to decide by itself, that do we as a society collectively decide that yes, our wives, daughters, mothers should kill themselves just because we are dead? No, that is something a societal consensus will require. But in this context now, let me take you to comment section of Kushal Mehra, okay, where this can be perfectly seen as an example where actually subjectivity and contextuality is important. Okay, देखो यहाँ पे, अरे कमेंट सेक्शन काहे नहीं खुल रहा है? एक मिनट रुको, हाँ ये वाला देखो। अच्छा, वो कमेंट अभी मुझे नहीं मिल रहा है। I had seen a comment where they were saying that decoloniality is bad because not everything about your past is good, or not everything needs to be respected. He was saying, so like there are vile practices like sati pratha and pashubali, but rangoli is a great thing. Therefore, we should keep up with rangoli and leave out pashubali and sati pratha. तो sati pratha तो ये है ही कि अगर तुम लोग देखो कि मानोगे क्या कि तुम्हारे फीमेल रिलेटिव्स को मर जाना चाहिए, तुम्हारे उनका हस्बैंड मर गया इसलिए. बट व्हेन इट कम्स टू पशुबली, दिस इज द बिगेस्ट एग्जाम्पल ऑफ कॉलोनियलिटी. कि तुम भाई वेगन नहीं हो, वेजिटेरियन नहीं हो, मगर तुम्हें पशुबली से प्रॉब्लम है. ये क्यों है? ये है क्योंकि तुम गांडू कॉलोनियलाइज्ड हो. ओके, दिस इज द बिगेस्ट एग्जाम्पल. ओके, बिकॉज what is the life of an animal in an animal meat industry? A lifelong imprisonment in cages, born with artificial insemination. Okay, in terms of cows, bull sperm हाथ से घुसेड़ा जाता है, ठीक है, या फिर रॉड से बुल स्पर्म घुसा दिया जाता है. एक काऊ का एवरेज आयु है 20 years. कोई भी काऊ इंडस्ट्री में 4 साल 5 साल से ज़्यादा जिंदा नहीं रहता है, क्योंकि जन्म से मृत्यु तक उसने सिर्फ वो बेसिकली रेप किया है. उसका रेप हुआ है, जन्म दिया है, दूध दिया है, फिर कुछ दिन गैप, फिर रेप हुआ है, प्रेग्नेंट हुआ है, जन्म दिया है, दूध दिया है. ये करके और फिर वो मतलब ट्रक में जब लिया जा रहा है उनको लाथे घूसे ये सब मारा जा रहा है उसको, ठीक है, चल 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 भोसड़ी के चल, ये सब बिहेवियर हो रहा है उसके साथ बड़े इंडस्ट्रीज में. ओके, बड़े डेयरी इंडस्ट्रीज में उसका तुम फुटेज देखो यूट्यूब में, 3 दिन सो नहीं पाओगे. ओके, रात में तो. और उसके बाद है उसको खाना क्या खिलाया जा रहा है? ओके, काऊ का आइडियल खाना है ग्रास, उसको दिया जा रहा है हे, HAY हे. फिर स्टेरॉइड दिया जा रहा है ताकि उसका तबीयत खराब ना हो. एंटीबायोटिक दिया जा रहा है ताकि उसका तबीयत खराब ना हो. एस्ट्रोजन दिया जा रहा है ताकि उसको अच्छे से बार बार वो प्रेग्नेंट हो सके और उसका मिल्क प्रोडक्शन अच्छा हो सके. और ये एंटीबायोटिक, स्टेरॉयड और एस्ट्रोजन जो कि सब तुम्हारे शरीर में घुस रहा है, और एंड एज अ गाय यू आर टेकिंग इन एस्ट्रोजन, तो तुम्हारा लोअर एब्डोमेन का चर्बी भी नहीं जाएगा, तुम्हारा बिहेवियर, मेंटल हेल्थ सब कुछ औरत जैसा हो जाएगा बिकॉज ऑफ एस्ट्रोजन. एस्ट्रोजन इज मेजरली अ फीमेल हार्मोन. एवरीवन हैज बोथ हार्मोन्स. मेन हैव मोर टेस्टोस्टेरोन, लेस एस्ट्रोजन. वुमेन हैव मोर एस्ट्रोजन, लेस टेस्टोस्टेरोन. तो तुम उनका सेकेंड हैंड एस्ट्रोजन भी ले रहे हो. तो ये सब तुम अगर खा रहे हो, ये सब में तुम्हारा एनकरेजमेंट है, ये सब में कोई अगर तुमको अपोजिशन देगा, तुम बोलोगे ये RSS का दल्ला है या फिर वेजिटेरियनिज्म इम्पोज हो रहा है. ओके, मगर तुमको मदरचोद तुमको पशुबली से प्रॉब्लम है. पशुबली में क्या हो रहा है? एक वो गोट जो कि जिंदगी, मटन इंडस्ट्री इज बाय डिफॉल्ट अ फ्री रेंज इंडस्ट्री. वो यहाँ वहाँ घूमता है हर रोज सुबह उठ के, ठीक है. तो उसको एक दिन सुबह लाके उसका पूजा पाठ करके एक झटके से उसको मार दिया जा रहा है. ओके, तो इस आइडियली तुम कर सकते हो कि अच्छा अगर पूरा का पूरा दुनिया वेगन बन जाए तब पशुबली माइट बी अपोज्ड. मगर सिंस दैट इज नॉट हैपनिंग एट ऑल रिमोटली, इंडियंस आर बिकमिंग मीट ईटर्स मोर इन नंबर्स दीज डेज, तब तुम पशुबली कभी भी गलत नहीं बोल सकते हो. स्पेशली ऑल्सो बिकॉज देर इज द एस्पेक्ट ऑफ द बिलीफ ऑफ द पर्सन, ओके, हु इज डूइंग दैट पशुबली टू मेक माँ काली हैप्पी. ओके, अब यहाँ पे आता है कि रैशनैलिटी का क्या होगा, एथिज्म का क्या होगा, कि माँ काली नाम का कोई चीज़ है नहीं, तुम्हें कैसे पता कि माँ काली हैप्पी हो रहा है या नहीं. यहाँ पे लिव्ड एक्सपीरियंस नाम का चीज़ का महत्व आता है, ठीक है. ऐसा नहीं है कि लिव्ड एक्सपीरियंस एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज़ है. हर एक्सपीरियंस लिव्ड एक्सपीरियंस ही होता है, मगर when a social science person talks about lived experience, they mean that something that has been felt by that person alone, that person is claiming that person has seen that or felt that, but not necessarily can that be proven to everyone else around them. Okay, like transgenderism. Okay, तो अब राजर्षि नंदी को हम कॉन्टेक्स्ट में ला सकते हैं. राजर्षि नंदी बार बार बोल रहा है, अभी तो बियर बाइसेप्स भी मान रहा है कि उसने ये प्रॉपर प्रोसीडियर फॉलो किया है और उन्होंने भैरव बाबा को देखा है. I have not gone through those procedures. I have no point of claiming that whether Bhairav Baba exists or not. I believe Rajarshi Nandi has seen Bhairav Baba. Okay, that is his lived experience. We can't formulate laws based on lived experience, but lived experience has a value. Someone who does have their lived experience, we can respect that to some extent. So if we are going to respect the lived experience of Shaktas, we can allow Pashabali, especially in the context of everything else, जहाँ पे कोई वेगन नहीं बन रहा है.
सबसे ज़्यादा अगर रेफरेंसेस को स्टडी करेंगे तो उन्हीं को कोट किया जाता है. But the point is that the entire theory and their papers, most of their papers focus on Latin American experiences and Latin American areas. And now the natural question that one should ask, at least I'm going to ask, is there a difference between decolonizing and decoloniality?
Yes.
As far as I have understood and whatever I have read, that even these guys do think that decolonizing and decoloniality are slightly different processes. So let's go there too. So decolonizing for these folks would probably mean, let's say, political and governance freedom. Freedom in those two areas. So let's say if I am decolonizing, I would remove the power of the Britishers or remove the power of the Mughals. If I was to extend it even further, the subalterns, removing the power of the elites of that time. So that would be decolonizing in that sense. But decoloniality would not just be that. Decoloniality would go into the epistemic realm. So decoloniality would be epistemic freedom, that you free yourselves not just from the power structure, that is a political change or a social change. Decoloniality would be a structural change in the sense that your ways of gaining knowledge, your ways of understanding the world, your ways of looking at something, your epistemology, right? How do you look at the world? So decoloniality would be epistemic freedom, shedding the epistemic burden of the past, of your colonizer. Yeah. Now, the question...
Now, he is saying this is a definition of decoloniality, right? To quote Kushal Mehra himself, in his podcast with Prakhar ke Pravachan, he said, epistemic decolonization बहुत ज़रूरी है.
I need to ask here, and this is my first question to people who, support decoloniality or kind of promote this thought, if I would say, is that I've noticed a very interesting trend here that, if you talk about decolonizing history, let's say, fair enough, we need to decolonize history. I understand what they're saying. So if you are decolonizing, so somebody might be saying that we need to get till the Britisher time. We need to decolonize those remnants. Somebody might take it a little further and take it right up to the Mughal period or the Islamic era in India. Now, my question is that the underlying assumption in all these situations is that, it is very Foucauldian in that sense. The way Foucault used to talk about episteme and power knowledge and discourses or biopower. Foucault used to talk about that, there are power hierarchies in society and knowledge is produced within those hierarchies. And those hierarchical situations relate to people telling you these are XYZ is the narrative. Or let's say now Lyotard, he had this thing about meta narratives. Now before somebody says, oh no, but decoloniality talks about being different from postmodernism. So I get it, but is it really different? So let's talk about that too. So let's see. So they say, and I quote Mignolo here, is that where did it go? So post-colonial theory is largely limited to the limited and internal to European history and the history of European ideas. This was Mignolo. Now, what they say is, yes, postmodern thinkers do recognize that this is a problem and we need to deconstruct this thought and stuff like that. But according to them, their way of deconstruction is also a very Eurocentric. So according to decolonial theory scholars, post-colonialism or postmodernism, what they like to call, commits the Eurocentric fallacy. That's what they say. So they are not sufficiently satisfied with that. Now, I don't know whether whether others will agree with them. I don't know
No,
because
there's another difference between postmodernism and decolonial. See, my girlfriend is doing her PhD in sociology, so whenever I read out her some sections from India, that is Bharat, she gets really happy. She says, "Oh, this this does sound like what Foucault would agree with," and that kind of makes me think twice. Arey baapre, I know parallelly that Foucault's worldview is not correct. तो तब यहाँ पे क्या फुकोडियन मिल रहा है इसको? So then I had to rethink some stuff. So one major difference between postmodernism and decoloniality would be that postmodernism is not positivist. Okay, in this context, positive and negative meaning means के positive मतलब तुम ये posit करना चाहते हो, तुम ये propose करना चाहते हो कि ये करना है. This is a pathway. This is what you are supposed to do. Or negativism would mean that ये theory है. This is what is I think right and this is what is wrong. Do whatever you want with it. Okay. For example, negative rights and positive rights. Okay, positive right would mean I have the right to your services. I have the right to your earnings. Okay, जो कि socialism है. Negative rights would mean a libertarian world. I have the right to not be done something to me by you. Okay. I had a great discussion on the day we met Jesai Deepak with that sociology PhD couple who are frequent viewers of my channel. The husband, the sociology professor, both of them are sociology professors. He was saying that why shouldn't we look at Hindutva as a social justice movement? And he said that he has had conversations with senior RSS people in Bengal as well, that why don't you all propagate Hindutva as a social justice movement? So I said to him immediately, because I'm always weary about social justice. So I said that see, even if it is social justice, we should keep it in the realm of negative social justice, not positive social justice. Meaning, अच्छा, अगर past Islamic kings ने कुछ गलत किया है, therefore, keeping that in mind, now we are not going to be positive about it. We are not going to say, अब मारो भोसरी वालों को, निकाल दो देश से. That would be positive social justice, which is what reservation is. कि इसके बाप दादाओं ने कास्टिज्म किया होगा, अब इसका मेरिट तुम उसका माँ बहन कर दो. बच्चा अच्छा से पढ़ रहा है, मेरिटोक्रेटिक बनना चाह रहा है, उसको तुम बोल रहे हो नहीं ये जो जिसने कम पढ़ाई किया है उसको नौकरी दे दो. ये चुतियापा नहीं होना चाहिए. नेगेटिव सोशल जस्टिस वुड बी के कीपिंग दैट इन माइंड, नाउ यू आर नॉट गोइंग टू फक विथ मी एनी मोर. And maybe we are going to be extra careful about it, perhaps, that your epistemology says that fuck with me. We are going to be extra careful about it. There's no way in hell can a descendant of an Islamic invader be allowed to fuck with Hindus. That is negative social justice versus positive social justice. So postmodernism का ये है कि postmodernism says we are not going to be positivist about it. Do what you will with this theory. Decoloniality is a little more positivist, that we need to have a decolonial future. You need to apply decoloniality. That is more of a positivist thinking.
Let's see what do the post-colonial theorists say, right? Because and now I'm going to read, because Edward Said had said that what does decoloniality say? Decoloniality says that they have an analytic and programmatic approach. That's what they say. So which is something that is lacking in post-colonialism or post-colonial theory. That's their criticism. But Edward Said, who was famous postmodernist, post-colonialist, whatever you want to call him, what did he say? According to him, post-colonial theory was both analytic and programmatic, according to him.
Yeah, see, actually, Kushal Mehra is not really being unfair here. He brought out a quote that he found on the internet, but that is not the real difference of post-colonialism and decoloniality, which we already discussed. The real difference between post-colonialism and post-colonialism and decoloniality is that post-colonialism says colonization was bad. Whatever came before colonization, that was also bad. Now chart a new future, okay? A completely new blank slate. Decoloniality says, no, let's see what was there before as well. And now some crazy decolonializers might say that everything that happened in the past was good, bring all that back. Jesai Deepak, on the other hand, Indian decolonialist thinker, is saying, no, hybrid future. Let's see what was good back then. And actually, in a way, that is kind of the Enlightenment era rationalist thinking as well. Because in this Amartya Sen book I was reading, he is saying that since you have your identity is multidimensional, you are a musician, you are a man, you are 32 years old, you are Bengali, you are Hindu. There are multiple facets to your identity. एक identity के ऊपर पूरा आपका पूरा जिंदगी नहीं बिता देना है. So why not start with a blank slate? And if given a blank slate, how many of y'all would really choose to be Hindu? How many of y'all would really choose to be a musician, etc. तो बर्थ के बेसिस पे हम क्या क्या आइडेंटिटी तुम्हारे ऊपर थोप दे. अब यहाँ पे एक प्रॉब्लम है कि अगर तुम हर बच्चे को एक ब्लैंक स्लेट से शुरू करवाते हो जिंदगी, तो दे एंड अप री इन्वेंटिंग द व्हील. So a lot of what I'm reading now, a lot of wisdom that I'm gathering from Hindu philosophy, I'm interested in reading it because I read from Sanjeev Sanyal's book that our past was great. That interested me in reading that. But I'm far behind so many people who already come from religious families and know all these stories. Okay, I have not till date read Mahabharata. I don't know exactly what happened. I know it was some story about some big war. I have read some children's version of Ramayana written by Satyajit Ray's grandfather. Okay. तो why do I have to reinvent the wheel? ये हर किसी को blank slate से शुरू करवाना होगा. That is a very wrong way of thinking. I'm not in favor of this blank slate because then अब हम सब कुछ क्या, अब हम पूरा जिंदगी हमारा आइडेंटिटी ही ढूंढते फिरे और कुछ में टाइम नहीं बिताना है. हर कोई तो अमर्त्य सेन नहीं बन सकता कि हम इकोनॉमिक्स में कुछ थ्योरी लिख दिए, वहाँ जाके टेन्योर प्रोफेसर बन गए, नोबेल भी मिल गया, अब बाकी ज़िंदगी बैठ के फिलोसॉफी का बुक पढ़ो और बुक सेल करते जाओ और यहाँ वहाँ टॉक देते फिरो. जो कि डे टू डे वेज अर्नर है या फिर कोई नौकरी करता है, वो उसका भी अगर आइडेंटिटी उसको ब्लैंक स्लेट से शुरू करवाना पड़े, तब क्या होगा? तब तुमको लगेगा कि अच्छा LGBTQ तो बड़ी आइडिया है. लड़कों को तो आइदर एकदम पुसी चूतिया बनना है या फिर एकदम वो हरामी होता है, लड़कों में और कोई कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स ही नहीं होता है. ये है ब्लैंक स्लेट का चूतियापा. ओके, ब्लैंक स्लेट नहीं होना चाहिए. कुछ ना कुछ बर्थ बेस्ड कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स नहीं, कल्चर वगैरह इम्बाइब करना है. यू कांट से दैट नो, ये तो तुमने माँ बाप से सीखा. तुम खुद अगर तुमको सीखना होता तुम क्या सीखते? हाँ, माँ बाप से ही सीखना है भाई. माँ बाप का सोसाइटी का यही फंक्शन है, नहीं तो हम सब जंगल में अकेले रहते हैं.
That was Edward Said, 1981.
Yes, here to learn is saying a very important point that most of the time we all end up reinventing a worse wheel, which is worse off.
So even in this point, there is no universal agreement that the decolonial scholars try to paint. Also, while the differences might be minute, what the sleight of hand that the decoloniality group does is, what they don't want to talk about is where they are similar to post-colonialism, postmodernism, or post-structuralism, and all those things. That's where the devil lies in the details. But having said that, now let us get into a little more detail. So I wanted to read a few things. What are 2-3 very key concepts in decoloniality? So the two main concepts in decoloniality or decolonial ethics are border thinking and pluriversality. Now I'll read what pluriversality is and what border thinking is. So I'm going to read from the paper. Okay, let's start with border thinking. So I'm reading directly. Reflecting the Enlightenment knowledge formations criticized by decolonial theory, cosmopolitan thought tends to think in abstract universalist terms without reflecting on the geopolitical location of the person who's speaking. Moreover, with notable exception including Saints, self-proclaimed unusual and eccentric approach, cosmopolitan global ethics tends to think with a tradition of thought running through Aristotle, Stoics, Renaissance humanism, Kant, Rawls, Habermas. Whilst the poor and the marginalized are often the object of cosmopolitan theorizing, they are very rarely taken seriously as potential producers of theory and knowledge or as potential agents of change. As Devo puts it, cosmopolitan work on global justice is marked by an absence of attention to the perspectives, aspirations, and political strategies of poor communities. Decolonial thought, by contrast, begins from what it calls the borders or margins. This subsection.
Whenever you find Kushal Mehra, this reading out sections, too much of jargon and heavy words you can't understand, don't worry, Kushal Mehra himself will explain it and then we will analyze it, okay? No problem. Okay, Nirad is saying some intelligent leftist guy was propagating this blank slate thing and saying people should not teach their children their parents' religions but all religions of the... Yeah. नहीं होता है, ये प्रैक्टिकल नहीं है. इन थ्योरी ये शायद ठीक है, मगर ये ना नीनड ये नेचुरलिस्टिक फैलेसी के तरफ भी चला जाता है ना. कैलिफोर्निया में कुछ सेलिब्रिटीज़ है जो कि अपने बच्चों को टॉयलेट ट्रेनिंग नहीं करवा रहे हैं कि नेचुरली वो क्या सीखता है, सीख ले. अगर हम नेचुरल ह्यूमंस होते, हम थोड़ी बाथरूम जाके टट्टी करते, हम थोड़ी दरवाज़ा बंद करते, तो नेचुरली बच्चे को सीखने दो. अरे भाई उस तो पेरेंटिंग वर्ड ही अब डिक्शनरी से बाहर निकाल देते. ये ब्लैंक स्लेट आइडिया ठीक नहीं है.
With these subaltern knowledges and cultural practices worldwide that modernity itself shunned, suppressed, made invisible, and disqualified. So doing means taking seriously as the producers of knowledge those marginalized individuals, communities, and traditions. Voices of the South must be heard, said Maldonado Torres. not just because we presume or have faith in equal value of other cultures, but because the centuries-old experience of coloniality and dehumanization provides colonized subjects with the important perspectives. One's geopolitical position and experience plays a role in shaping thought, and taking those on the receiving end of colonial forms of domination as producers of knowledge will mean understanding better and being able to respond better to legacies of colonial rule. Decolonial thought thus gives a
No name is bringing out a very important point. I think the problem in the reality is the reality in India, which is Kushal Mehra's also main problem with decoloniality, that decoloniality supporters are using decoloniality as the last refuge of casteism. हाँ, ये decoloniality use कर रहे हैं to defend birth-based casteism etc. but और bad behavior based on casteism, क्योंकि after all caste के basis पे कुछ करना तो है तो illegal. तो what is the worst thing they can do? That is bad behavior. Okay. Now, if a theory leads to bad behavior, we have to discard any and every theory. Okay. Let's say Ankit Shah's vision of geopolitics. Okay. I can use that theory today and go around telling all Americans के तुम भोसड़ी वाले अमेरिकन्स तुम्हारा माँ बहन होने वाला है 2025 तक. ये हुआ सेम बैड बिहेवियर बेस्ड ऑन अंकित शाह थ्योरी. तो वो थ्योरी का प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, अंकित शाह का भी प्रॉब्लम नहीं है भाई. तो वो उस थ्योरी के डिफेंडर्स को और भी ज़्यादा तत्पर रहना पड़ेगा. ओके, डिफेंड करना पड़ेगा. डोंट मिसयूज दिस और नो दिस थ्योरी डज नॉट से दिस. बट वी डोंट रियली हैव टू बी डिफेंडर्स ऑफ डिकोलोनियलिटी. डिकोलोनियलिटी इज नॉट आवर धर्म. दिस इज जस्ट वन वे टू लुक एट द वर्ल्ड. दैट्स ऑल आई एम सेइंग.
A preferential option for the condemned of the earth by placing at its center the questions, concerns, and proposals for decolonization that emerge in the underside of the modern world. Now that I've read this, your immediate reaction would be, hey, sounds fair. Really? Because yes, the suppressed should be heard. People whose ideas are suppressed or are not heard should be given a voice. Fair enough. Now let's dissect this. What is the possible problem with a mindset like this? So, like this particular line where they say, decolonial thought thus gives a preferential option for the condemned of the earth by placing at its center the questions, concerns, and proposals for colonization. Now, so what are we essentially talking about here? The condemned of the earth. So basically what we are talking about is oppression hierarchies, where there is an oppressed and there is an oppressor. So let us take an example. Globally, across the world, Islam is oppressed. Is it or is it not? Ask yourself this question. Is in the global system or in the global discussion, Islam, is it not considered to be an oppressed? Forget that. Come to India. Islam is considered to be an oppressed group or oppressed ideology in India. So, my question to you is, according to decoloniality, blatantly obvious, unscientific gibberish that might stem out of Islam, it might stem out of any place. It might stem out of, let's say some obscure practices of some groups in India, which have no scientific basis. This mindset basically legitimizes pseudoscience or gives a humongous potential to the legitimization of pseudoscience. And there is a living example of that where in New Zealand recently I had come across an article where they are planning to teach indigenous sciences parallel to what they like to now call Western sciences. Yes. So that's what you might do. So next in a Christian country.
Yeah, this is of course one possible side effect that's always going to happen, which is why I'm saying that things like Tantra is in the realm of lived experience. Lived experience should be left in the realm of lived experience. Theology, okay. Laws should not be formulated based on lived experience. So as a society, we need some consensus on some things, one of which should be that, yes, even if there is something called indigenous science, which is so-called opposed to Western science, when it comes to formulating law and education, we need provability by the five senses, okay. आध्यात्मिकता है फाइव सेंस के बियॉन्ड. क्या है? चक्षुष प्रत्यक्ष प्रमाण. दैट इज द नॉट चक्षुष हियरिंग ऑरल एवरीथिंग. ऑल दैट प्रत्यक्ष प्रमाण is in the realm of science, and that will be only treated as science. That will be the only thing taught. If you want to teach indigenous science, which you can perceive through your mind, manas pratyaksha praman, okay, या फिर अनुमान प्रमाण, that is in the realm of philosophy, theology, bhai. Know it, learn it. It might actually benefit you because so many people are saying it's benefiting them. Lived experience का एक जगह है, ओके. और अगर आप लॉ के नज़रिए से भी देखें कि आफ्टर ऑल आई विटनेस अकाउंट्स, ओके, आफ्टर ऑल पीपल आर क्लेमिंग दैट आई हैव हैड द एक्सपीरियंस, आई हैव फेल्ट भैरव बाबा स्टैंडिंग इन फ्रंट ऑफ मी, इन फ्रंट ऑफ माई हाउस, इन माई रूम. तो उनको क्या बोले? नहीं, तुम गलत थे, तुम हेलुसिनेट कर रहे थे. मैं कौन होता हूँ उसको बोलने वाला कि हेलुसिनेट कर रहे थे तुम? मगर वो सीखो, फिलोसॉफी थियोलॉजी के रेल्म में, नॉट इन द साइंस क्लासरूम. साइंस क्लासरूम में 5 senses, because that leads us to best results. And I don't really think it's anytime soon that's going to go away, because when India is relooking at its cultural history, ancient history, we are parallelly looking at its brilliant economic history. We are idolizing Chanakya, science, etc. We are sending space missions, etc. All that is being glorified in schools directly by the government. तो एक टॉप डाउन नैरेटिव तो पुश हो रहा है टुवर्ड्स रियल साइंस, सो कॉल्ड वेस्टर्न साइंस ओनली. तो आई डोंट थिंक इट्स अ रियल थ्रेट, बट इट माइट समडे डिस्टॉर्ट इनटू दैट. तो कोई भी आइडिया ना इस ऐसे नहीं सोचना चाहिए कि ये मैंने एक बढ़िया आइडिया दिया है, इसके वजह से अब हज़ारों साल से ये देश या ये सोसाइटी बढ़िया चलता रहेगा. नहीं भाई, हर आइडिया डिस्टॉर्ट होगा ही. कुछ 100, 400, 500 साल बाद हर सोसाइटी डिस्टॉर्ट होगा, उसका भोसड़ा बनेगा, मगर उसके बाद एक काउंटर नैरेटिव लाना पड़ेगा ही. तो एटलीस्ट फॉर नाउ आई डोंट सी एनी सिग्निफिकेंट प्रॉब्लम विथ इंडिजिनस साइंस टेकिंग ओवर रियल साइंस.
Country, they will be like, in a school there will be secular science which says evolution is real, and then there will be Christian science which believes in creationism.
या ये होम्योपैथी ना स्यूडो साइंस का, ये मैंने बहुत बड़े होके मुझे पता चला. आई डिडंट नो होम्योपैथी वाज कंसिडर्ड स्यूडो साइंस बिकॉज आई हैड सीवियर एजमा व्हेन आई वाज बोर्न. So for first 2-3 years, like when I used to breathe, people used to be able to hear my breathing from the next room almost. Okay, so my asthma went away because of homeopathy. So I don't exactly know. I have not researched about this specifically. Why is homeopathy considered a pseudoscience? What is the history of homeopathy?
Right, and then you will have different groups being taught different things in school. There will be no standard curriculum, right? There is no truth after all, right? Because there are different oppressed classes, and because they are oppressed, every single idea of theirs has to be by default considered to be primarily above others, because that's what they believe in. That's what it is. Now, there is another thing.
No, Avinav, for placebo to work, the person has to know that they are having a placebo. No, my breathing stopped. I was like 2 or 3 years old hardly. Okay, how did a placebo work on me?
It says in the start, subaltern knowledges and cultural practices worldwide that modernity itself shunned, suppressed, made invisible, and disqualified. Now let us take that on face value. Okay? There are many concepts that modernity has rejected. Modernity has rejected the concept of women as chattel. Today, now you can say common law had women as chattel and stuff like that, right? Now what if that value structure got imposed on India? I'm just thinking out loud. Was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? Is my question. So what? It came out of a certain thing. 2, is everything that is coming out of modernity, because modernity, according to the decoloniality praxis, is directly related to coloniality, and rationality is also a colonial way of thinking. By the way, that means everybody else is irrational, sirf wo log rational the, which is very funny. Now think about these things. What are the potential things? Now I want to read something else again from the paper. Starting from the border leads to a further notable difference between decolonial and cosmopolitan global ethics. The moral cosmopolitanism of which decolonial thought offers an alternative identifies individual persons as the only unit worthy of fundamental moral concern. Other beings, mother nature, communities, and so on, can be only of derivative concern on the basis that they are valued by and or support and realize the rights of the individuals that ultimately matter. Some of the cosmovisions that operate at the borders have different understandings of what it is of fundamental moral significance. There are, for instance, indigenous cultures in sub-Saharan Africa that embrace the notion of Ubuntu, that a person is a person only through other people, and hence deem the community to be of fundamental concern. Aymara and Quechua cosmovisions discussed earlier emphasize Sumak Kose living well in harmony with Pachamama, Mother Nature, and the community. Given that these different perceptions of fundamental moral importance exist, decolonial ethics refuses to specify in advance what counts as worthy of such importance. To settle this question in advance serves only to exclude some positions in the name of a particular individualistic value that is projected as universal and global design. As such, it would reproduce epistemic forms of coloniality in which only some are able to speak for what is universally and globally significant. Despite the rejection of individualism, decolonial ethics does not revert to a communitarian position according to which different cultures have their own isolated value systems and normative standards. The borderlands are already inflected with global processes. They are, after all, borderlands, places where a global form of coloniality is felt as domination, dispossession, and potential epistemicide. The borders then provide an epistemic location from which to develop a critique of modernity from the geopolitical experiences and memories of coloniality. To think from the borders is, moreover, to think with clashing perspectives. It is to bring into productive dissonance and develop a critical perspective on both modernity and the livelihoods and cosmovisions that it threatens. Arthat, what they mean to say here is that basically individualism sucks. Long story short, इतना लंबा मैंने आपको वर्ड सैलेड पढ़ा. Basically what they're trying to say is individualism is again a very uniquely Western construct. So because it is Western, it is colonial. Because it is colonial, it has a certain baggage. Because it has a certain baggage, आपको reject कर देना है. Obviously, they are, they have humongous problems with capitalism too, because again, they will say capitalism based on a certain way. My point is, again, just understand what they're saying over here. If they are saying, they gave the example of the Ubuntu, that a person is a person only through other people, and hence deem the community to be of fundamental concern. Now, I want to take the belief of the Ubuntu at face value, right? That sucks. That worldview, that my value does not come through my own individual identity and only comes through the value of the group, sucks. It's a third-rated idea. There is no other way to put it. It's a stupid idea. Which means, what are the possible dangers if we adopt a decolonial approach to everything? That means we are essentially living in a world where different groups are interacting with each other. There is no individual. It's basically group A, group B, group C, group E, and all these groups are hustling with each other. All these groups are trying to put their own identities and ideologies on the table and trying to negotiate with each other. There is no individual in this. Now, if that is the case, I completely understand if anybody who believes in decoloniality will oppose the Uniform Civil Code. I totally understand why they are opposed to the Uniform Civil Code, because the Uniform Civil Code wants to look at you and all the individuals, or all the people as individuals. While the current idea that we have in this society, where we have different civil laws for different religions, is actually pretty much based on the decolonial border thinking way of looking at the world. It treats people as groups.
So guys, the classic group identity collectivism versus individuality argument. My opinion is that every theory that you say is good or bad is predicated on which society claims to apply that theory and whether they are succeeding or failing with that theory, right? We say socialism and communism sucks because every socialist and communist state or country goes to dog shit. Okay. Now, individualism का इतना जो मतलब popularity है, individuality का जो इतना popularity है, क्योंकि so far we have seen that Europe, who has claimed to propagate individual rights, individual freedom, USA, which has done it, they have succeeded. Now, have they succeeded because of individual rights or have they succeeded because of capitalism, free market, या फिर colonial past, इतना सोना वोना चोरी करके ले गए उसके वजह से, या फिर a combination of all these three, or because of freedom of speech, gun rights, everything, okay? It might be a combination of all these things. Now, what happens when that society goes to hell? What happens when that society goes to hell specifically because of individual rights or individuality or individualism? Then how do we define or how do we defend individualism, guys? The problem is individualism, according to me, has worked in USA or Europe because it was a culturally, even racially homogeneous society. Individuality can work when there is a homogeneous society protecting the individual, okay? One way to look at it is that one for all for one, okay? The unit contributes to the whole contributes to the unit, okay? When there is that concept of open society and its enemies, okay? तो अगर open society नाम का कोई चीज़ है तो उसमें तो जो कोई भी हाथ डाल देगा. तो theoretically, open society will always be vulnerable to the enemy. So the open society has to be enclosed by something. And in order to close it in a border, okay, individuality can't work completely. What we say when what we mean when we say individuality, or even Kushal Mehra says, I think they mean the heterodoxies of the society. And there I have an agreement that yes, a society should have some room for heterodox behavior. There should be room for someone having a fresh, different way of looking at things, someone pursuing a different profession, etc., someone having different tastes, choices. And even if it's a group identity based society, just because one person is doing things a little differently, don't go kill that person. Maybe you can discourage him a little, which is how Indian society basically works. Indian society at the end of the day kind of allows individuality but also discourages it. कि नहीं musician काहे बनना है, नौकरी करो, डॉक्टर बनो, okay? But at the end of the day, if the person does become a musician, not every family completely disowns their children. Okay, some families do, and that may be attributed to the pressures of being in a socialist society. के डॉक्टर और इंजीनियर नहीं बनोगे तो तुम्हारा जिंदगी खराब हो जाएगा, डेफिनेटली खराब हो जाता था बिफोर 1991. ओके और फिर म्यूजिशियन बनने के इतने सारे और भी कल्चरल मतलब बिहेवियरल प्रॉब्लम्स भी होते हैं कि तुम्हारा मतलब डिबॉचरी से ज़िंदगी भर जाता है, तो उससे भी माँ बाप को बहुत प्रॉब्लम होता है. तो देयर आर ऑफकोर्स बैलेंसेस टू दिस, बट unless there is a culturally homogeneous society which is a strong group, there can be no individualism. Why is today individualism causing so many problems in USA? Because USA's cultural and racial homogeneity is gone. When USA was propagating individualism, almost everyone was white, everyone was Christian or Jewish. तो जूडियो क्रिश्चियन वैल्यूज़ तो बाद में हो गया, पहले तो वो क्रिश्चियन प्रोटेस्टेंट वैल्यूज़ पे ही बनाया हुआ देश था. एवरीवन हैड अ यूएसए फ्लैग in front of their house, everyone had a barbecue steak, everyone went to hunt, okay, everyone believed in hard work, democracy, freedom, these buzzwords, and inside that theoretically individualism was being encouraged, बट इंडिविजुअली वो बंदा वही काम कर रहा था जो कि पास वाले गली में एक और बंदा कर रहा है. तो इंडिविजुअलिज्म का मतलब ये नहीं था कि कंप्लीटली डिफरेंट अलग चीज कर रहा है जो कि मतलब अनहर्ड ऑफ है पूरे सोसाइटी में. तो जब तक कोई अनहर्ड ऑफ चीजें नहीं कर रहा है तब तक वो एक्सेप्टेबल है, इवन इन अ सोसाइटी विच क्लेम्स टू प्रायोरिटाइज इंडिविजुअलिटी. तो इट्स लाइक जयंत भंडारी कंपेयरिंग इंडियाज विलेजेस और इंडियाज पास्ट प्रॉब्लम्स with the best possible scenario he has seen China and US's cities in. So basically you are comparing two different people in two different positions in their journey. Okay, so if you say that now individualism is bad simply because USA has today gone to hell, no, I wouldn't say that. Individualism has had its benefits in USA. Okay, क्योंकि यूएसए में इतने सारे डिफरेंट काइंड्स ऑफ आर्ट एंड कल्चर जन्म ले पाए. ओके, तो यूएसए का 200 साल का जो प्रॉस्पेरिटी था वो आज यूएसए में गड्ढे में गया है, इसलिए हम यूएसए के सारे आइडियाज लात मार देंगे, ऐसा ठीक नहीं है. देन अगेन यू आर कंपेयरिंग ओनली यूएसए's today's worst possible scenario with India's rising ascent now. No, let's see which country succeeded because of which great qualities when they were great. Okay, let's not compare the worst situations any country or society was in with the best of some other country. So there are different facets to it. Individualism is not completely bad or completely good. Individualism succeeds when there is some sort of cultural homogeneity.
Your group identity is primary. If you happen to be an individual, it is only secondary. And the entire negotiation happens between group identity.
Elliot Anderson, our cities are 100 years behind China. Come to Rajarhat in Kolkata, okay?
First and then individual identity, and no wonder the result is India is a hellhole. Now I'll make my point with using Islam an example now, but I want to go further.
Darth Vader, yes, this is what I said in the beginning. It might be the case. I'm not that well read in USA's history. I have a basic reading of USA history. It might as well be true that because USA was successful, therefore they could fuck around with these ideas of individuality. It might be possible.
All right, now there is another concept which they call pluriversality. Okay, so again I'm going to read. Pluriversality refers first to the way in which a value is constructed, and second to a particular value of a world in which many worlds fit. As indicated earlier, universal values are constructed from a particular place and yet deemed global in significance. Recall Hell's individualism, which is intertwined with liberalism and the Enlightenment, tied to particular traditions and places, and yet regarded to amount, prior to democratic dialogue, to a general and universal claim. Pluriversal values, by contrast, are a product of intercultural dialogue. A value is pluriversal insofar as it is constructed in a manner that takes seriously, shows respect for, and emerges from communication and exchange across multiple places, cultures, and cosmovisions. This dialogue can involve forms of communication ranging from argument and discussion to performance and ceremony. Such communication, together with respectful translation across cultures and cosmovisions, can foster commonality as people share stories of common forms of oppression. It can also develop values that have global significance not by virtue of an already existing universality that can be articulated from one particular place, but on the basis of resonances amongst translation across and the construction of common understandings among multiple positions. Now, 2-3 things that you need to observe what I've said here is, what is the common factor that they believe can be formed across these multiple groups in the pluriverse? Again, there is no individual. They're all pluriverse groups. So the common What does the commonality want it to be as? It is as people share stories of common forms of oppression. So basically, again, what is the worldview? It is that I am oppressed, you are oppressed, I, the woman, is oppressed, I, the SCST, is oppressed, I, the brown guy in a white nation, is oppressed, I, the falana dimkana LGBT QIAPPVZVZ जो भी होंगे is oppressed. So your only commonality is your group identity, and if your group identity in the hierarchy of a nation is oppressed.
Yeah, see, now Kushal Mehra is making the same mistake which I was basically saying to the defenders of decoloniality to not make, which is don't compare the worst of USA which is happening now to argue a particular point. Now he is saying अगर हम decoloniality का ये angle ले ले कि it will be just a conversation about oppression, तब तो हमारा आज के वोकिज्म में जो हो रहा है वो होगा. क्यों भाई, क्यों यूएसए का आज का वर्स्ट हाल क्यों कंपेयर करे? Kushal Mehra might say that those conversations have happened because of things like decoloniality, but not entirely. That's not what's being argued here. It could have been a conversation about oppression even before these things happened, before wokeism came into USA.
Try and understand what is the commonality they are seeking. Secondly, another,
because without those conversations about oppression, civil rights would not happen in USA.
Point I want to make is that if there is no individual, and this is something I had written in my essay that I wrote on my website, Decolonial Ethics, the tussle between individual and group rights.
Kushal Mehra is about to bring up one good point. This is where he has made a legitimate point, where actually the Western decolonial scholars have made a mistake, because they have not seen a truly culturally diverse, religiously diverse society like India, right? So the underlying presumption of decoloniality is, by the way, that ये society का जो डिकोलोनियल जर्नी है, दैट मीन्स ये सोसाइटी का एक ही डिकोलोनियल पास्ट है, एक ही कल्चर है, जो कि नाउ विल बी अ रेजिस्टेंस टू किकिंग आउट वेस्टर्न थॉट प्रोसेसेस एंड वैल्यू सिस्टम्स. अब इंडिया में क्या करे? इंडिया में तो इतने सारे प्री कॉलोनियल पास्ट है. या फिर मुस्लिम्स को बोल दे कि तुम डिकोलोनाइज मत करो, तुम ब्रिटिश के जैसे ही सोचो, या फिर तुम हिंदू के जैसे सोचो. कुछ ना कुछ तो उनको बोलना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि इतने सारे मुस्लिम्स हैं, इतने सारे बुद्धिस्ट, सिख, जैन, ब्राह्मण हिंदू एट्सेट्रा है, पारसीज है. तो इंडिया का डिकोलोनियलिटी किसका डिकोलोनियलिटी होगा? यहाँ पे फिर हमारा एक कॉप आउट देना पड़ता है कि नहीं, तब ना हमको मेजोरिटेरियन खेलना पड़ेगा, हमको एक कल्चरल सुप्रीमेसिज्म का भी आर्ग्यूमेंट देना पड़ेगा कि नहीं, हिंदुइज्म बेस्ट है, वैदिक इंडिक थॉट प्रोसेस इज बेस्ट है, और वो सबसे पॉपुलर भी है, सबसे ज़्यादा लोग इसको फॉलो करते हैं. देयरफॉर इंडियाज डिकोलोनियलिटी विल बी जस्ट दैट, नॉट द अदर वंस. बिकॉज अगर इस्लाम अब डिकोलोनियलाइज करने लगा, तब तो हो गया, तब अब फिर से जेनोसाइड शुरू. तो वहाँ पे एक अच्छा आर्गुमेंट कुशल ने निकाला है.
So I want to go to that particular specific thing, right? So what does decoloniality want? It wants a world in which many worlds fit. Good. A world in which many worlds are possible. So here's my question, and I directly asked this question on my essay. So is Taliban also part of that pluriverse or not? Think about it. Because Taliban also promotes, to quote the paper,
it's now here again Kushal Mehra is making a mistake. तालिबान डिकोलोनियल है कि नहीं वो मेरा कंसर्न नहीं है. वी आर नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट अ यूनिवर्सल डिकोलोनियल एसोसिएशन, डिकोलोनियल यूनाइटेड नेशंस में तालिबान को अब बैठने का जगह, तो ऐसा नहीं है. अगर तालिबान थियोरेटिकली इज डिकोलोनियल, तो वो तालिबान का प्रॉब्लम है, वो मेरा प्रॉब्लम नहीं है.
An understanding of the inseparability of equality and difference, a world in which many worlds are possible, means that people and communities have the right to be different precisely because we are all equals. So are the Taliban morally equal to us?
Not my problem.
Why is it that I should not ask this question? And the question of Taliban is not just from the point of view of how they treat women. Not just from that. Why do they not get a seat at the table? And if you are going to give me an answer saying that Taliban is oppressing and there is an oppressed, then you, in India, in the eyes of this epistemology, if you happen to be in the general category, are also an oppressor. And now I'll see the live chat going apeshit, because all the general category folks in the live chat will be like, oh my god, ये तो problem हो गई, इसने तो हमारा concept हम पे मार दिया. Because not every person who might be, some people might be a member of Taliban out of, I don't know, force. मरता क्या ना करता, भाई member बन जाओ नहीं तो मैं मर जाऊंगा. Is he an oppressor? And then my question is that, are all the so-called upper castes of India, by your own logic and by the logic of decoloniality, oppressors?
They are by the logic of the Western decolonial scholars, which is why the NRI decolonial scholars pestered Walter Mignolo to recant his appreciation for J. Sai Deepak's book because they told him, भाई ये तो ब्राह्मणिकल पेट्रियार्की कर रहा है और आप उसके बुक को अच्छा बुक बोल रहे हैं. तो यहाँ पे हमको क्लैरिफाई करना है कि कॉलोनाइजेशन किसको बोले. सब कोई जब भी यहाँ पे आया और आके रुक गया वही कॉलोनाइजेशन है. जूज आके केरला में कॉलोनाइजेशन कर रहे थे, पारसी आके कॉलोनाइजेशन कर रहे थे. अगर मान भी लिए कि आर्यन माइग्रेशन हुआ था, विच आई एम नाउ कन्विंस दैट इट डिड नॉट हैपन, इट वाज मेनली OIT. आर्यन इन्वेजन तो इज आउट ऑफ क्वेश्चन. अगर माइग्रेशन भी हुआ है तो क्या वो कॉलोनाइजेशन है? वो कॉलोनाइजेशन का डेफिनेशन में नहीं आता है कुशल मेहरा जी. ये एक क्लैरिफिकेशन ज़रूरी है. एंड आई एम सेइंग दिस पोलाइटली बिकॉज आई डोंट हैव एनी एंगर टुवर्ड्स कुशल मेहरा इन दिस कॉन्टेक्स्ट. दैट इज नॉट कॉलोनाइजेशन. Okay, colonization is only and only what Islamic invaders did and the British did. So if someone argues that the Brahmins are colonizers, they are factually wrong. तो वो factually wrong है, उसको हम काउंटर करने के बजाय हम अपना जो थ्योरी बाकी जगह में ठीक है उसको क्यों मॉडिफाई करें? उसको हम बोलेंगे कि नहीं भाई, ब्राह्मण्स कॉलोनाइजर नहीं है, कोई हिस्टोरिकल फैक्चुअल बेसिस नहीं है इस क्लेम का. तो वो कॉलोनाइजेशन नहीं है. जो कॉलोनाइजेशन है उस कॉलोनाइजेशन के खिलाफ रेजिस्टेंस को हम डीकॉलोनियलिटी बोल रहे हैं. ब्राह्मण्स के खिलाफ डीकॉलोनियलिटी नहीं काम करता है क्योंकि दैट्स नॉट कॉलोनियलिटी टू बिगिन विथ. जो कॉलोनियलिटी है ही नहीं उसके खिलाफ डीकॉलोनियलिटी कैसा?
I certainly don't think I am an oppressor. I have nothing to do with the shit that has gotten in the past. I refuse to say sorry for anything that has happened in the past. I am not party to it.
Fair enough.
I will not apologize for anything that I have not done in my life.
Fair enough. Here again is something I agree with Kushal Mehra. He's talking about historical injustices, which I clarified in one of my videos that am I talking about Islamic invasions, Muslim oppression or colonization today in the same way that woke people are doing it because of historical past injustices? No, I'm not talking about those things because of historical injustices. I'm talking about those things because their descendants intellectually as well, who believe in those same epistemologies, they are going on doing the same things today. आज रामनवमी पे हमला हो रहा है. आज कश्मीर हिंदूज कश्मीर में नहीं वापस जा पा रहे. आज लक्षद्वीप द्वीप में इंडिया का फ्लैग नहीं उठा पा रहे. आज अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी का भस्म एशेज आर नॉट बीइंग अलाउड टू बी ड्राउंड इन द रिवर्स ऑफ नॉर्थ ईस्ट इंडिया. आज वक्फ बोर्ड है. तो ये हिस्टोरिकल इनजस्टिस का जो चुतियापा है उससे इवन आई डोंट अग्री. ओके, सो नो ब्राह्मण टुडे हैज टू अपोलोजाइज फॉर देयर पास्ट एंसेस्टर्स. ओके, if you say today that yes, you kind of have a justification to behave badly towards a lower caste person, then I have a problem with you. Unless you're doing that, I have no problem with you. No historical injustice bullshit.
I will not even apologize for anything my immediate family has done in my life. Why should I say sorry for that? I didn't do it. Whosoever did it will say sorry for it. But decoloniality and decolonial ethics, this whole oppressor and oppressed way of looking at things, cannot stop at when you want and how you want. That, when we are talking about Islam and the role of Islam, I am the oppressed, they are the oppressor because they came.
Abhay, very good point. He's saying then, by that argument, even American influence on India is not coloniality. Because American actually didn't really colonize us. It was not even deliberate, according to my own arguments. Okay. But there, why I'm calling that coloniality and not Brahminical or the existence of Brahmins or Ved in India colonialism, because even though Brahmins also did not do any actual colonialism, that is because America is the direct successor of the actual colonial powers. Same people, same thought processes, same epistemology, everything. All that got transferred to America when the colonizers fell, all the colonial governments fell. Then their shape and form changed. Before they used to come here, colonize, settle or convert. Later on, they started making movies which we started accepting on our own. So the effect on us was more or less the same. Maybe the genocides did not happen, but their efforts were not the same. So for us, it was coloniality, but they did not really colonize us. But since there was a direct continuation of that thought process by the same people, by the same cultures, therefore, I'm bringing that into the realm of coloniality.
Came and ruled us. When I'm talking about the British, they are the oppressor, I am the oppressed because they came and ruled us. But when it comes to the caste hierarchy and the caste matrix, caste is a Western construct. वाह जी वाह, ये बड़ा convenient system है. ये कैसे निजात किया? That means you will develop things as and when they suit you. So think about it. Is this epistemology really that sound? I don't think so. I think it is a third-rated epistemology where there is no individual. And also, is individualism a Western construct? That's another question that we need to ask ourselves. So think about it. I mean, there was that, let me find that story out for you and I'll read it. I always use this story as a perfect example of individualism in Indian thought. Let me open it, just give me a second.
This is a
because I want to read
great point.
exactly. I don't want to make a mistake. I'm reading from Vivek Devroy's translation of the Valmiki Ramayana. Yuddhakandam, I don't remember the exact sarga. I think it was 102.
Great
so don't
point.
quote me on that. Valmiki Ramayana. A tiger pursued a hunter. The hunter climbed a tree on which a bear was perched. The hunter and the bear agreed that they would not push each other down. The tiger asked the bear to push the hunter down, but he refused. When the tiger asked the hunter to push down the bear, he tried, but wasn't successful. The tiger repeated the request to the bear, citing violation of the pledge. However, the bear refused and chanted the shloka, in quotes, "The wicked acts committed by others are evil committed by others. They do not touch you." I repeat, the wicked acts committed by others are evil committed by others. They do not touch you. A pledge must
well
be honored.
said. See, even Ramayana is saying that historical injustice does not matter, bro. तुमने नहीं किया है तो नहीं किया है. You are not to share the blame. Elliot Anderson is making a great point, which I need to clarify. He is saying, therefore, the soft power influence of any other society is going to be considered coloniality. No. India's influence on Tibet will not be coloniality because India or any country like India never colonized Tibet. If, let's say, there was Singapore, which has its Ramayana and Hindu cultures, etc., if they colonized Tibet, left, and then Indian movies started influencing Tibet, then you could say, yes, that is coloniality. That is not what is happening in Tibet. Okay. Whereas in USA's influence on India is having the same effects, whereas at the same time, meanwhile, coincidentally, USA happens to be the descendant, cultural and intellectual descendants, even racial descendants of the same colonizers. So there is a continuation, okay? Same log are involved, okay? Therefore, that's coloniality.
Honored for virtuous people, good conduct and conduct constitutes ornaments. I repeat, the wicked acts committed by others are evil committed by others. They do not touch you. This is from the Ramayana. If there ever was an unequivocal endorsement of individualism and individual thought, it is right inside your scripture. It is literally inside your scripture. So first of all, to say individualism, individuality is a Western construct is wrong. Secondly, to say modernity is a Western construct is also not entirely accurate, because far before the Protestant Reformation happened, the Bhakti movement in India was already challenging a lot of narratives by breaking the Jati Varna matrix.
Okay, here J. Deepak would agree with Kushal Mehra 100%. Okay, that is the problem. J. Deepak would say yes, and the fact that you are saying that अरे भक्ति movement में तो already modernity हो गया था, that is a sign of your decolonial thought, which has been my forever qualm with Kushal Mehra criticizing decoloniality, is that he comes from a devout Hindu background, he comes from a family of BJP supporters, which is why he doesn't see the value of these things. Concepts like decoloniality is of great value to people like me, who don't come from religious backgrounds or pro-Indic backgrounds. It's just a great lens. A relevant question came here, Amritangshu Jha. He was saying that why do we even need these lenses and theories, etc. See, theories का काम ही ये है. Theories सबके लिए नहीं है और सब theory तो सबके लिए है ही नहीं. कुछ theory कुछ लोगों के लिए applicable है, relevant है. It helps them look at the world in a better way, in a more correct way. That is all I'm saying.
Creating different panthas. Now, you can call it what you want to call it, but in my view, modernity is...
Yes, Abhay, I would agree with you here that India's influence on Indonesia is definitely coloniality. And if they think it's not working out for them, they should kick it out. I can't say that, no, it's working great for you. Keep up with that. No, I'm just happy that they are keeping up with my coloniality, okay? And just like the West is happy that so many Indians are influenced by American movies, etc.
Basically the process where the moral arch keeps expanding and you keep on challenging the narrative of the current elite, and by which the moral arch keeps on expanding and expanding and expanding, and it keeps on including new people. And yes, the core of the modern framework is the individual. But if you flip it around and you make the group the core of your mindset, which is basically what India is. In India, everything is about group rights. I mean, in India, गलती से कभी-कभी हम लोग individual rights के बारे में बात कर लेते हैं. But if this is going to be our core, then I don't know how to say this. We are screwed. Because if we are going to say that decoloniality is directly related to coloniality and modernity, and even in that rationality comes in. So,
Shaptarshi, a good point. Why is Bhakti movement modernity? Because what pro-modernity scholars claim to use to claim and defend modernity कि ये है modernity. अच्छा ठीक है, ये चीज़ हुआ था and that's what we are calling modernity. वही same चीज़ हुआ था in terms of Bhakti movement as well.
So we basically are denying ourselves and our children to a multitude of epistemologies, first of all. Because let's assume that even if they come directly from the colonizer, just because they come from the colonizer doesn't mean they're effectively bad. Secondly,
that is, Deepak would agree, which is why he's saying hybrid future.
What this really promotes is a framework which is totally relativistic. And if you don't want to call it relativistic, you can call it subjectivistic. Because again, this is a sleight of hand played by folks in India who support decoloniality. If you call them relativistic, they'll say we are subjectivist, as if it makes it better. One is dog poop, one is horse poop. It doesn't matter. Both are shit. Because whether it's relativism...
Yeah. In the garb of subjectivity and relativity, we are not going to justify Sati Pratha, but we are definitely going to say Pashubali is not the worst thing in the world. It's not a archaic, savage practice. That is the difference.
Or whether it's subjectivism, both deny an absolute objective moral standard. And that's where the problem lies. And decoloniality is exactly that. You can spin yarns of apologia around it. You can twist it, turn it, bring it to the left, bring it to the right, jump on top, go to the bottom, but it won't change anything. It will just not change anything. So don't live in that, in that free world. So I'll use another quote, right? So Mignolo has once said, there will be no place for one option to pretend to be the option. The decolonial option is not aiming to be the one.
Right.
It is just an option that, beyond asserting itself as such, makes clear that all the rest are also options. Okay?
Yeah.
So the Talibani way of life is also an option. In India, when Muslim women have to go through nikah halala, it is also an option.
Great point. He made one bad point and immediately made a good point. तो तालिबान का प्रॉब्लम, तालिबान का इशू ये है कि हम चाहे या ना चाहे तालिबान तो होगा ही. तालिबान इज इनएविटेबल. हम जाके अगर सबको बोलने लगे कि नहीं जो अच्छा चीज़ है वही करो, तब हम में और यूएसए में क्या फ़र्क रह गया. ठीक है, हम तो ग्लोबल पुलिसिंग का बात नहीं कर रहे. That is why decolonial scholars are saying it's not about global policing. We are not going to go around telling people no, see, this is good and this is bad. तो तालिबान अगर अफगानिस्तान में है तो है, वो उसका प्रॉब्लम है. थैंक गॉड फॉर द नेशन स्टेट कॉन्सेप्ट. हमको ये नहीं झेलना है. हमारा प्रॉब्लम है कि अब हम निकाह हलाला का क्या करें. डिकोलोनियलिटी अगर हिंदुओं के लिए है तो वो उनके लिए भी है. वहाँ पे हम कल्चरल सुप्रीमेसिज्म के सिवा अलावा और कोई आर्ग्यूमेंट नहीं दे सकते कि नहीं हमारा ही फॉलो करो, तुम्हारा डिकोलोनियलिटी मत फॉलो करो, तुम्हारा डिकोलोनियलिटी चूतिया डिकोलोनियलिटी है.
Right? Burqa is also an option. Ghungat is also an option. Sati is also an option. Discriminating against each other on the basis of your jati identity is also an option. I'm literally reading Mignolo. That's what I'm doing. Another quote, what we put on the table is an option to be embraced by all those who find in the option or options a response to his or her concern and who will actively engage politically and epistemically to advance projects of epistemic and subjective decolonization and in building communal futures. Tell me, how do we build this communal future? So, another point in this paper, they say the point is to suggest that decoloniality should be considered an imperative and not just an option to be placed on the table. So, understood, decolonial global ethics goes beyond the relativism of anything goes. Any option that inevitably depends upon the systematic description of other worlds would violate the principles of a world in which many worlds fit. But how the hell are you going to then say that burqa is not that option? Because it does destroy the individuality and choice of a woman. But lo and behold, it's not going to be allowed. The same people will defend it because the people who defend decoloniality in different shades and forms in India also oppose the Uniform Civil Code, because all these misogynistic practices in India are not going to go until we don't have the Uniform Civil Code. And if we go for a Uniform Civil Code, that means we are universalizing. The moment we universalize, we are colonial.
Universalizing not for the entire world, universalizing for our nation state. यही तो एक फ्लॉ है डिकोलोनियलिटी में, क्योंकि डिकोलोनियल स्कॉलर्स हैं जिन्होंने ये आइडिया बनाया, उनको पता नहीं था कि इंडिया के जैसा भी एक मतलब डाइवर्स सोसाइटी है. तो यस, यूनिवर्सल सिविल कोड बट फॉर इंडिया. सिर्फ इंडिया के अंदर.
So how are we going to solve this? Think about it. So, it's not so easy to just pretend that nothing is happening. These are serious concerns. Now, and I don't even want to say that, that coloniality does not have a role to play. Yes, it does. At times, people have conditioning too. But to extend it and say that the scientific method and its underlying epistemology, the entire scientific method itself, which is empiricism, rationality, and critically evaluating things, that itself is, a colonial project, is the most dangerous thing we can do.
Yeah. And M. Shastri is asking a good question here. He's saying, Dada, does Mignolo's decoloniality theory lack the concept of appropriate for the times? No, actually, decoloniality would argue that don't feel ashamed just because of Sati happened, but understand why Sati happened, which was, it might have been relevant for those times, which is that basic argument between progressivism and conservatism, which I was saying that story, few live streams back, which I heard from Ben Shapiro, that one conservative and one progressive is walking in the forest. Randomly, they find one fence in the middle of their road in the forest. Okay, जंगल में कितना रास्ता होगा, थोड़ा सा एक पाथवे क्लियर किया हुआ है फॉरेस्ट के अंदर, वहाँ पे एक फेंस दिखता है उन दोनों को. प्रोग्रेसिव जाके बोलता है ये फेंस काहे पे है, यहाँ पे हमारा रास्ता रोक रहा है, फेंस को उठाओ फेंक दो. कंजर्वेटिव जाके बोलता है कि नहीं, अरे फेंस किसी ने डाला होगा, किसने डाला, उसके बारे में थोड़ा डिबेट कर लेते हैं, डिस्कशन कर लेते हैं. तुमको पता नहीं है कि वो फेंस यहाँ पे है, मुझे भी पता नहीं है. Let's discuss that. Then if we find out if the fence is here for absolutely no fucking reason, then we will throw it out. But we might end up finding out that the fence is here actually for some good reason as well. वो डिस्कशन के लिए तो भाई फ्री स्पीच पहली बात तो ज़रूरी है. हर बात पे तुम इसको एंटी नेशनल या मतलब ट्रैड वैड नाम एड होमिनम अटैक करने से वो डिस्कशन फर्दर नहीं होगा. तो मगर वो फेंस किस लिए है वो डिस्कस करना ज़रूरी है. तो अगर चाइल्ड मैरिज, सती प्रथा, कौंचिका पहनने वाले लोग अचानक क्यों घूंघट देने लगे, ये सब का आर्ग्यूमेंट ज़रूरी है और ये सब का रीज़न हमको पता है क्यों हुआ. ठीक है, वाल्मीकि के रामायण में जयंत सीता के ब्रेस्ट पे बैठते हैं और तुलसीदास के रामायण में या फिर किसी और के रामायण में बाद वाले 1500 के बाद वाले रामायण में जयंत द क्रो सिट्स ऑन सीताज फीट, क्योंकि तब तक ब्रेस्ट का जो एपिस्टेमोलॉजिकल व्यू है वो चेंज हो गया है सोसाइटी में. क्यों ऐसा क्या डिफरेंस हो गया था वाल्मीकि के टाइम से और 1500 में, वो तो हमको सबको पता है. ठीक है, तो लर्न, अंडरस्टैंड व्हाई योर सोसाइटी डिड दैट. डोंट जस्ट डिफेंड इट like a dumb fuck, or don't just discard it like a fucking pussy. That is what decolonial scholars are saying.
So, I want to quote something from a paper that I have recommended, in which the author has written, as philosopher Susan Hack points out, in relation to the epistemological issue.
I am not going to ban anyone from a comment section. He's driving up my algorithm. अरे राजपुत्रा बोलो, इंडियन कितने खराब है, हमको समझाओ, हमको समझ में नहीं आ रहा है, बोलो भाई.
Who's involved in the Daubert versus Merrill Doe farm in court case. In short, not all and not only scientists are reliable inquirers, and not all and not only scientific evidence is reliable. Nor is there a scientific method in the sense the court assumed. No uniquely rational mode of inference or procedure of inquiry used by all scientists and only by scientists. Rather, scientific inquiry must respect the desiderata, constraints, and inferences of all serious empirical query, but has developed, in addition, a vast array of constantly evolving and often local ways of means of stretching the imagination, amplifying reasoning power, extending evidential reach, and stiffening respect for evidence. But the point is, there has to be respect for evidence. There has to be some evidence-based system.
Yes.
To say
evidence-based system ठीक है, 5 सेंसेस में ही, 5 इंद्रियों के बेसिस पे ही सिस्टम होगा, वही साइंस होगा. बाकी जो लिव्ड एक्सपीरियंस है, वो जो इंडिजिनस साइंस है, जो कि 5 सेंसों में हम प्रूव नहीं कर सकते, वो थियोलॉजी और फिलोसॉफी के realm में जाएगा. वो भी पढ़ाना जरूरी है क्योंकि दैट माइट एंड अप बेनिफिटिंग समबडी.
that the evidence-based system itself is colonial is absolute rubbish. It makes no sense. Because if we start going down that road, and this is the problem that happens. Now, it might well be the case that the serious scholars of decoloniality, some may not go down this route. But I can tell you what happens in your average day social media discourse where people, anytime you challenge anything that is remotely related to Indian culture or Indian ideologies and Indian sensibilities, where our past is scrutinized or anything from our past is scrutinized, the standard answer, which is the be all and end all of everything, is the straw man argument. Oh, that is just being colonized. If you talk about caste differences in India, oh, that is just being colonized. If you talk about anything, oh, that is just your caste differences being colonized. I'm sorry to say, you're not colonized if you talk about caste differences in India. You're not colonized if you talk about oppression of women and, the subalterns in India. These are real stories of real people. There is evidence behind it. And to dismiss it by saying, oh, you are looking at it from a colonial lens. No. You are wiggling out of it because you have found a convenient tool to relativistically or subjectively dismiss.
Now, I don't have to be offended by it because I am not wiggling out of it, okay? Anyone who is offended by it will probably be the one who is actually wiggling out of it. I'm not trying to wiggling out of it. Therefore, I don't find Kushal Mehra speaking directly to me here.
Anything and everything that is inconvenient to you because you assume yourself to be part of a group, because you're a group thinker, and because you believe in the birth-based caste system, and you believe because of the birth-based caste system, you've followed this rule for years. If you believe in the birth-based caste system today, then whatever was done by that group in the past is your problem. And this is why you need decoloniality. That is the problem, which is very dangerous. And if you are going to fall for that, hey, all the best. So I want to read some more things from the paper. This is another paper A further problem is that although decolonial thinkers are explicitly concerned about transforming social injustices, their epistemological perspective ultimately leads to relativism, which is a problematic basis for social critique and analysis. As Alan Sokal and Jean Bricmont point out in their now classic critique of postmodernism, if all discourses are merely stories or narrations, and none is more objective or truthful than another, then one must concede that the worst sexist or racist prejudices and the most reactionary socio-economic theories are equally valid, at least as descriptions or analysis of the real world, assuming that one admits the existence of a real world. Clearly, relativism is an extremely weak foundation on which to build a criticism of the existing social order. Walter Mignolo is one decolonial thinker who adapts an openly relativist stance, pointing out that his strange alternative epistemological principle, quote, I am where I think, is one basic epistemic principle that legitimizes all way of thinking. This is Mignolo 2011. Although Mignolo talks about legitimizing all ways of thinking, not specific thoughts, it still raises concerns. For example, our political society...
Okay, Vijay Kumar has asked an important question. Dada, how about theories written by Ramanujan? Where he says that theories are given by his Devta in a dream. Fair enough. There goes to 6 of evidence. So we are not concerned about how Ramanujan got his theory. Okay, he may have gotten it because of his deep sleep, yoga nidra, Devta, Bhagwan, lived experience, anything. We are concerned with what did Ramanujan give us. हमारे पास जो सामने आ रहा है वो प्रूवेबल है कि नहीं, ठीक है. अगर रामानुजन हमको ऐसा थ्योरी देते जो कि उसको देवता से भी मिला है और हमको देखने के लिए भी देवता का आशीर्वाद ज़रूरत हो रहा है, उससे प्रॉब्लम है. और now let's apply even decoloniality here. Why shouldn't we consider Ramanujan's theories even if they are not provable by the five senses? Because they might have gotten it that way in the past because there were not so many improved gadgets. Okay, society का evolution towards betterment तो ultimately technologically होता है. Everyone tries to build something that's that makes your job easier. So what we have realized now is that the technology we have, with the technology we have, our job becomes much easier if we look at things or use things or believe in things which are only provable by five senses. Okay. And based on that, if we pursue a thing called science and make things based on that thing called science, then our job becomes easier. Therefore, we are trying to pursue it. But if there is the sixth, seventh sense in the realm of philosophy, theology, learn it, apply it in your personal life, in the realm of lived experience.
Societies and social movements to make decisions of public interest on the basis of hallucinogenic rituals carried out by shamans, by consulting the tarot, or by the public universal standards of rational evidence-based inquiry. According to
the M. Shastri, ये एक बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है. ये नेचुरल साइंस और सोशल साइंस का डिफरेंशिएशन, इतना डिमार्केशन एक बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है. बट आई थिंक दैट ट्रेन हैज लेफ्ट द स्टेशन. वी कांट नाउ एमलगमेट द टू, क्योंकि ये सोशल साइंस आईआईटी में घुस के ऑलरेडी मार दे रहा है आईआईटी का. तो वी कांट नाउ फक विद दैट. दिस इज द हैंड वी हैव बीन डेल्ट. ये एक प्रॉब्लम है कि in Western epistemology doesn't distinguish between knowledge and wisdom, Gyan and Vigyan. Yeah, that we have our own epistemology and concepts of scientific methods and evidence. Yes, and there have been discussions and debates even between ancient rishis as well, that should we go beyond five senses or should we stay in five senses? Because the five senses idea actually was there in India as well, and that came later on. कि ये जो तुम मानस प्रत्यक्ष प्रमाण के रेल में घुस रहे हो, वो प्रूवेबल नहीं हो रहा है. उसमें से हमको बहुत प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है चीज़ों में, मतलब डिबेट करने में, डेलिबरेट करने में, लॉज बनाने में. ठीक है, तो फाइव सेंसेस में ही रहते हैं. दैट वाज अ कलेक्टिव डिसीजन द सोसाइटी टुक, एंड आई एम सेइंग वी कैन ऑल्सो टेक. Parakram Divya is saying only an idiot would treat social sciences as mathematical truth. People like Kushal think they have answers to every question.
Colonial perspective, these must all be deemed equally valid. This is not to imply that such rituals and practices do not embody forms of knowledge that are valid in certain contexts for certain groups of people. It is merely to say that when it comes to the plural public world of politics and political critique, scientific knowledge and logical evidence-based reasoning provide a necessary baseline. Mignolo also states that I am where I do flatly rejects the assumptions that rational and universal truths are independent of who presents them, to whom they are addressed, and why they have been advanced in the first place. But such a position simply undermines itself. If there is no independent standard of truth, what makes Mignolo's own historical accounts of modernity true? Think about what I have read. Think about what I have said. And ask yourself, if this is what decoloniality is, if this is what you are buying, why should I not believe if some religious book says the earth is flat? And if that is the case, why should all these theories not be taught as equally valid in schools? If this is what we are going to do, because uniformity is a Western construct, consistency is a Western construct, standardization is a Western construct, where the hell is the truth? I thought the main aim of us as human beings was being a truth seeker. And it doesn't matter where anything goes. Sometimes our culture might be correct. Sometimes the opposite culture might be correct. Sometimes maybe even our neighbors like Pakistan might be correct. What should matter is what is true. And if the truth gives us solace, fine. If it gives us irritation, so be it.
I have a viewer who said a phenomenal thing. It's the most phenomenal comment I've received on my channel, and it always sticks my mind, and I actually have said this to many other people as well. He is one of those people who has read a lot of Hindu scripture and primary sources in Bengali. He's a Bengali person. So he says whenever someone asks him what Hindu scripture should we start with if we are interested in reading about Hindu theology, he says read the Arthashastra. Arthashastra basically embodies everything that the philosophy of Hinduism claims to propagate, because Chanakya has also said that nothing I'm writing is going to go against Vedas, etc. Okay, and at the same time, it was the day-to-day applicable constitution, law, espionage, way of thinking about law, economics, everything. Okay, so that's a great way of looking at it. Arthashastra should be considered your Hindutva theological book even, okay?
But if you're going to go down this rasta, this road, this epistemic framework, which is being bandied about as something extremely cool, and that you are colonized, you are this, you are that, I don't know what to say to you, man. I think we are really screwed. And best of luck. That's all I can say. Best of luck. And don't believe a word I say. Like I said, you can start by reading the papers that I've said, and it's going to be in the description too. Read this book by Mignolo and Kathleen Walsh. Read these papers that I've said. Try and understand what this worldview is. Try and understand what border thinking is. Try and understand what pluriversality is. And then ask yourself, if I try to apply this to Muslims in India, if I try to apply this to justify divorce laws of Christians in India, by the way, the Christian divorce laws in India are the worst. Period. They are horrendous. Please.
Now, why would we use decoloniality on Christians? Decoloniality जो है, D जो है, वो D किससे है? D रैंडम कुछ चीज से तो नहीं है, D coloniality से है. तो coloniality तो क्रिया है Christians ने. तो Christians don't have any right to decoloniality.
Please go and read about them. And if we are going to use this thinking and justify any damn thing on planet Earth, I can't be party to it.
Vijay Kumar, exactly. He's saying that everything is about a Purva Paksha in our scientific discoveries. Yes, but the invaders destroyed our society. The scientific temper took a backseat. Exactly. Primacy to security of life. Absolutely true. And this is, I don't know if you were in the beginning of our live stream. This is what we discussed in the beginning of our live stream only. We quoted Amartya Sen. He says that when colonization happened and Eastern societies, colonized societies kind of gave up on science and decided that Adhyatmikta is our realm. Science by tumse hi hoga, humse na ho paega. But now we are saying that no, we were great at science as well. So this we were great at science as well. उसका side effect है कि हम बोलेंगे कि महाभारत में nuclear bomb था, मगर that is also a sign that we are now interested in being good at science as well. तो ये thought process कि हमको science में भी अच्छा होना है, ये आता है after there is some sort of cultural pride. ये cultural pride must have come because of Mahabharata nuclear bombs, but it has to start somewhere. That set the ball rolling. Thoughts like Amartya Sen or Kushal Mehra's don't set the ball rolling. That is the problem. So now if we say that yes, we had great scientific history and therefore we are now going to be great at science today and not call it Western, no one has a problem with it. Not Desai Deepak, not Kushal Mehra, not Amartya Sen, not me. The problem is who thinks whose theory is best. There the difference lies.
So for the last time, and now I'll start taking your questions.
Okay, now great questions are going to come, okay? Keep on watching.
With decoloniality. I think decolonizing and decoloniality are two separate issues. Yes, we are all trying to decolonize in our own way. But the colonizer left us in the 1940s. We are an independent society now. Yes, we will have some colonial prejudices. But that doesn't need decoloniality. This epistemic worldview is a shit show. And if you're going to be party to this, then please do not say that nikah halala is bad. Please do not say female genital mutilation is bad. Please do not...
Yeah, he's repeatedly now saying that decoloniality is bad because what if we apply that for Indian Muslims? Okay, Here to Learn is saying define modernity. Let's see what exactly is the definition of modernity. That will be fun. Let's see what the proponents of modernity say. The quality or condition of being modern. Modernity, a topic in the humanities and social sciences, is both a historical period and the ensemble of particular socio-cultural norms. Ye hai problem, see? Not just a historical period, but the ensemble of particular socio-cultural norms, जो कि उस समय का norm था. ये ही है problem of modernity, okay? Now you see Here to Learn. Now you see why Desai Deepak is writing against modernity. So anything that is contemporary is not modern. But people in India use the word modernity as if contemporary, okay, like Bangla Adhunik Gan, তাই না? Bangla Adhunik Gan has nothing to do with European modernity. We call it Adhunik Gan because it's happening now. Now even Adhunik Gan has also become modernity kind of, because by the definition of Adhunik or modern, fossils would be the true Adhunik Gan, but we are saying the 90s Monomoy's album of Durga Puja time, that is Adhunik Gan. Fossils is not Adhunik Gan. So everyone makes these theoretical mistakes. अरे full screen काहे नहीं हो रहा है?
Say getting 12-year-olds married is bad. Do not say that. Then defend all of those things too, and defend every single bad practice that we have done in the past. Then defend casteism. I'll just leave. I don't know. I'm not made up my mind though. I just want you to ask one last question, because I have genuinely not made up my mind on this. Is decoloniality a old wine?
एक मिनट, ये फुल स्क्रीन नहीं क्यों हो रहा है? फुल स्क्रीन नहीं होने से बहुत घटिया दिखता है स्क्रीन. रुको थोड़ा ट्राई करते हैं, एक मिनट. हाँ, अब फुल स्क्रीन हो रहा है.
In a new bottle, which means the old elite is trying to reassert
This is a fair question.
power through a new. Is decoloniality a old wine in a new bottle, which means the old elite is trying to reassert its power through a new method of a word salad, that they think anything goes will be there, तो हम हर चीज को reject कर देंगे और हम हर चीज को relativize कर देंगे. Does that mean the old elite, which has clearly lost political and social power in India?
Some people are doing it. But see, again, whenever we discuss casteism, the entire तीर and a gun gets pointed towards Brahmins, who are 4.3%. भाई ऐसा कोई मैजिकल दुनिया नहीं है कि जहाँ पे 96% लोग 4.3% पॉपुलेशन वालों का सुप्रीमेसी मान लेंगे. द प्रॉब्लम इज एवरी वर्ना, एवरी जाति, एवरी कास्ट ऑपरेसिंग और बिहेविंग बैडली टुवर्ड्स देयर लोअर जाति एंड वर्ना. Not by every, I don't mean every person in those every jati varna, but some people in every varna jati behaving badly towards their lower jati and lower varna. That is the problem. So some people obviously might use decoloniality to justify their bad behavior.
And I'm talking about inside the Hindu fold. I'm not talking about between religions. I'm talking about inside the Hindu fold. Are they now trying to come back through subterfuge using decoloniality? I don't know. I'm just asking a question. I've not made up my mind on it, and I'm not trying to be sly here. I am genuinely curious. And if not, they need to explain many things. I'll leave you guys at that. Now I'll take the questions. I'm sorry I almost have spoken for 1 hour, but hey,
Great questions came. Abhay was live the whole time in this live stream as well, who is live here as well. Okay, Abhay is saying, but everything modern should not be rejected. Yes, but like the fence, okay, we will discuss it. Is this fence just modernity, or is this fence good, or is this fence bad? And then we will keep the fence in the forest or kick it out. For which we need plenty of debate, free Twitter, like our Lord and Savior Elon Musk has given us, free speech, and not ad hominem attacks.
अच्छा हो गया. So I can get the questions from the beginning. Okay. Let me see. UPI का तो question नहीं है ना? नहीं. Okay, why don't you invite Deepak to the podcast and fight it out with civility, of course? Well, I don't fight. We are not on speaking terms. I have nothing against him, nothing personal against him, but he seems to think that because I criticize decoloniality, that means I have a bad opinion of him. I don't. I think he's a good guy. We just disagree. I have read his book. I have criticized it openly. In fact, even in my piece on decolonial ethics, I actually quote his book directly, where, and I quote here, this is the direct quote from his book. So I have said decoloniality and its supporters insist that when a whim is couched as a right and has the effect of adversely affecting the interest of the group or the interest of other groups of the civilization.
Okay, now he's going to quote J.S. Deepak directly. Before that, let me just answer to Vijay Kumar. Caste is not, he's saying caste is not bad until it becomes vertical and rigid. I read a book, Caste as Social Capital, by Professor R. Vaidyanathan. There he has valid arguments with data points. I'm saying, तुमको रिजिड रखना है, बर्थ बेस्ड रखना है, जो करना है करो. जस्ट डोंट बिहेव बैडली विथ समवन एल्स. इट्स इलीगल एनीवे. अगर तुम लीगल करना चाहो बर्थ बेस्ड कास्टिज्म के बेसिस पे कुछ करना, तब तो और भी प्रॉब्लम है, विच आई डोंट सी हाउ पीपल आर गोइंग टू अग्री टू इट एनी टाइम सून. बट ऑल आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट इज बैड बिहेवियर. तुम अपने जिंदगी में जो करना चाहे करो. अपने कास्ट में मैरी करो, अपने भाई बहन को बोलो कि नहीं अपने कास्ट में मैरी करो, ठीक है. Don't behave badly to people who are strangers. because you think you are of a superior varna or jati. That is all I'm saying. Vertical, horizontal, jo rakhna hai rakho. Don't behave badly with other people based on that.
Interest, the individual's right must necessarily be traded off against the greater good. This is a direct quote from his book, and I mean, or later on, he says in his book, uniformity in any realm, including especially in civil law, is the subject of deliberation. The federal character of the civilization and the reasons for its survival must be borne in mind before resorting to a European-style national treatment of a federal civilization. Or the whole is as strong as its parts, and the survival of the parts is contingent on the subsistence of the whole. So my question to that was, is Sharia law also a subset of that whole? If it is the survival of this part also contingent on the existence of the whole? Another thing he has said in the book is, time and again, the reformers put forward the argument that uniformity is necessary without explaining why, simply assuming that uniformity is an unquestioned good. No, the reformers actually explain why uniformity is good by giving multiple cases that when you have uniform laws about how women should be treated, they get better conditions. So to say that the reformers have not explained this is not accurate. So there you go. I hope you get the answer. Is there any evidence of the difference in treatment of the conquered population if the conqueror was Hindu army versus Muslim one? I mean, you will have to go and check the history books. I'm not a history buff, so I will not answer that, to be very honest. I'm not a historian. Would appreciate a comment on how decoloniality differs from post-colonial theory. Like I told you, in fact, I covered this in the beginning itself, right? I even read. मैंने start में ये explain किया था. In fact, they claim it is different, but वो basically, like I made that point, right? कि analytic and programmatic aspect है. जो decolonial बोलते हैं कि post-coloniality की problem है, it is not analytic and programmatic. But post-colonialists like Said say that we are analytic and programmatic both. So there is no agreement on them. That's what decoloniality says. Didn't the European Enlightenment lay the foundation of Nazism, communism, and the French Revolution terror, as they were justified using rationality and science and were anti-religions? They were justified using bad ideas. And rationality was used to reject those bad ideas. The story of humanity is rejecting bad ideas by using rationality. It's not the complete opposite thing. When Mendelian genetics was misused by the Nazis, it was not some outsider who came and gave the answer. It was those very people who gave the answer.
Misuse किसने किया, किस बेसिस पे मिसयूज किया? यूजेनिक्स. ओके, ब्लैक पीपल शुड नॉट बी अलाउड टू ब्रीड, ब्लैक पीपल का यूथनाइजेशन कर दो क्योंकि ये गांडू रेस है. ये सब किसने बोला था? साइंटिफिक टेम्पर वाले एंथ्रोपोलॉजिस्ट ने बोला था. तो हर थ्योरी का मिसयूज होगा भाई. कौन मिसयूज करेगा इस बेसिस पे हम कोई थ्योरी को गलत नहीं बोल सकते हैं. हम सिर्फ ये देख सकते हैं कि उस थ्योरी से ज़्यादा खराब इफेक्ट हो रहा है कि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा गुड इफेक्ट्स हो रहा है. अगर कोई सचमुच पीसफुल मुस्लिम आदमी है, लाइक ए आर रहमान, ओके, ए आर रहमान, रूपम इस्लाम, दे आर नॉट क्रिएटिंग एनी प्रॉब्लम्स फॉर मी एज अ हिंदू, बट व्हाट इज इट मेजरली डूइंग? ओके, तो वहाँ पे प्रॉब्लम है. तो साइंटिफिक टेम्पर, एंथ्रोपोलॉजी, सबका हम धोती उतार सकते हैं कभी एक दिन बैठ के.
Why have European Enlightenment ideas and liberalism failed to confront Islamism in Europe and Afghanistan? I guess the Islamists are more rigid and more medievalist in their tendencies and in their mindset. Could be one of the reasons. They tend to cling on to the religious idea more. Could be one possible answer. Periyar in Tamil Nadu called himself a rationalist or was inspired by European Enlightenment idea, but the biggest caste is anarchist, misogynist. I don't agree with Periyar. I think he was a casteist and a hater.
गुड क्वेश्चंस केम भाई. पेरियार भी एनलाइटन वाले थे बड़े. तो वो तो खुद कास्टिस्ट बन गया एनलाइटनमेंट का बुक पढ़ के.
It's just the opposite end of the spectrum, the horseshoe theory. Both the ends have become extreme. Which aspect of Arya Samaj do you disagree with? Their extremely anti-Murti Puja stand would be one. 2, their mistranslation of the Vedas. Don't you think in a decolonial worldview, the whole concept of a nation state diminishes? I mean, group can operate. That's exactly what I said, right? If it's basically pluriverse, even in my piece, if you remember.
This is one fucking great question, man. This is a brilliant question, and I think this we need to think about. Don't you think in a decolonial worldview, the whole concept of nation state diminishes? I mean, group can operate themselves, why a state is needed? This is one big problem with decoloniality. Problem with decoloniality से ये मतलब है कि इफ इट्स टेकन टू इट्स लॉजिकल एंड, ओके, तो हर कोई भी थ्योरी कोई भी लॉजिकल एंड में कोई नहीं ले जा सकते अनलेस वो डिक्टेटर है। वही तो प्रॉब्लम है कम्युनिज्म सोशलिज्म का। अगर अगर कैपिटलिस्ट सोसाइटी में बहुत बकचोदी हो रहा है, थोड़ा सा सोशलिज्म का एक मरहम हम डाल सकते हैं, मगर अब पूरा सोशलिज्म कर दोगे तब तब तो गाड़ में चला जाएगा सोसाइटी। तो डीकोलोनियलिटी भी ऐसा नहीं है कि हम कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में अब डाल रहे हैं इंडिया भारत दैट इज भारतवर्ष अ डीकोलोनियल कंट्री, ऐसा तो नहीं है। मगर if decoloniality is taken to its logical conclusion, then yes, then it becomes anti-nation state model itself, which I am against, which I am glad it has happened. Nation state जो अब बन गया है, this is better than every Hindu kingdom fighting against every Hindu kingdom, inviting Muslim kings to fight against Hindu kings. वो चुतियापा बंद हो गया, ये बहुत बढ़िया बात है। And decoloniality is points out the problem is with a nation state, but ये अब अगर है, इस रूल्स पे हम सब खेल रहे हैं, अब ये चेंज करने का कोई फायदा नहीं है। प्रॉब्लम मतलब बेनिफिट से ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लम्स ही होंगे। तो ये एक ब्लाइंड स्पॉट है डिकोलोनियलिटी का।
But I read this that I stated this in the end. The principle of individual rights work on the framework of the Han principle. So the final question for decolonialists is that in a world where one group is negotiating with the other, how does one function? What will be the legal framework? Will groups govern themselves under decentralized organizations like the All India Muslim Personal Law Board or Khap Panchayats? How will one seek justice? If uniformity is bad as a matter of principle, why is a nation or a civilizational state good? Why should we not live in small groups with porous borders where different groups negotiate with each other on a constant level? In fact, this was the very thing that I had questioned.
No, not entirely fair criticism, because he's talking about what if it's taken to its logical conclusion. But then if taken to logical conclusion, no state works. Individualism doesn't work if it's taken to its logical conclusion.
I read Decoloniality myself. क्या आप गा सकते हो? एक बार प्लीज गाइए। मैंने क्या मुजरा लगा के रखा है जिधर मैं गाना बजाने गाने के लिए आया हूँ? ये किस किस्म का क्वेश्चन है? डीकोलोनियलिटी, सारे पाप वेस्ट ने किए हैं। नहीं वेस्ट ने नहीं, डीकोलोनियलिटी इन इंडिया कहेगा सारे पाप वेस्ट ने किए हैं और इस्लाम ने किए हैं, और बाकी हिंदुओं ने कभी कुछ नहीं किया है। हिंदूज आर प्योर एंड पाइस। थोड़ा सा आप गलत समझ गए। Shouldn't we invest in social sciences in India instead of sourcing it to the West? Shouldn't Indian ideas have a seat at the table? All ideas should have a seat at the table, but there has to be some merit to it, na? Will you go to a physics conference and say, because I have an idea and the earth is flat, I should get a seat at the table? कुछ तो एक basic standard।
इस क्वेश्चन को थोड़ा हम भी सोचते हैं। shouldn't we invest in social sciences in India instead of outsourcing it to the West? तो हम सोशल साइंसेज में इन्वेस्ट नहीं कहाँ कर रहे हैं भाई, हम तो इन्वेस्टमेंट कम करने को बोल रहे हैं, क्योंकि सिलेबस नहीं चेंज हो रहा है। फालतू में इतने सारे एंटी इंडिया लोग बैठे हैं पूरे देश में, पूरे वेस्ट में, पूरे जगत में, पूरे इंडिया में, पूरे दुनिया में, इंडिया से जाके। तो सोशल साइंसेस का क्या होगा मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा, अनलेस वी डिफंड इट। नहीं तो कंप्लीट सिलेबस चेंज करके सोशल साइंसेज में क्या पढ़ाएंगे? फिलोसॉफी का रेल्म तो ठीक है, हिंदू फिलोसॉफी पढ़ाएंगे। थियोलॉजी का रेल्म ठीक है, हिंदू थियोलॉजी पढ़ाएंगे। सोशियोलॉजी में क्या पढ़ाएंगे? वो बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है सोशियोलॉजी में पढ़ाने का है। सोशियोलॉजी कॉन्सेप्चुअली इज अ मार्क्सिस्ट कॉन्सेप्ट, तो उसमें तुम क्या हिंदुइज्म घुसाओगे? जो घुसाओगे वो मतलब कोई मार्क्सिस्ट वर्जन ऑफ हिंदुइज्म ही आएगा कि अच्छा आई एम अ ग्रेट कम्युनिस्ट एंड देयरफॉर आई एम अ ग्रेट शक्त, क्योंकि हिंदुइज्म टीचर्स नॉन वायलेंस, हिंदुइज्म टीचर्स वो गरीबों का भला करना है, देयरफॉर आई एम अ कम्युनिस्ट। ऐसा चुतियापा निकलेगा। तो सोशियोलॉजी फंड करके क्या मिलेगा मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा है।
स्टैंडर्ड लाइन रखोगे कि नहीं रखोगे, कि कुछ भी पेलते रहो? स्टैंडर्ड क्या है आपका? स्टैंडर्ड तो डिफाइन करो।
या विजय कुमार, वी हैव डन दैट in the general realm of social science, but social science बोलने से सबसे पहले दिमाग में आता है सोशियोलॉजी। सोशियोलॉजी में क्या पढ़ेंगे इंडिक मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा है।
Why do you think India was colonized twice? Because if the Aryan invasion and Aryan migration is real, India was colonized thrice. वो colonization के ऊपर भी थोड़ा accept करो ना। उसके ऊपर क्यों नहीं बात करते? What
No,
if it is
actually the question was fair. Kushal is not being fair. Oh, Mr. Lee, ये तो हमारे पुराने viewer थे. तो he's saying, do you or do you not accept that India was colonized twice? First an Islamic colonization and then a British colonization. If so, then isn't Sharia a colonial construct? वो तो colonization है. But as we discussed earlier, that Brahmins cannot be argued to be colonizers at all because there is zero evidence of them colonizing. They may have come here, they may have influenced, but colonization का definition वो नहीं है.
रियल? भाई स्कूल्स में तो बहुत मेजर साइंटिफिक व्यू तो है कि एआईटीएमटी रियल है. मेरे व्यूज पर्सनल छोड़ दो, एआईटीएमटी रियल है तो वो भी कॉलोनाइजेशन मानोगे कि नहीं मानोगे? मेरा वो क्वेश्चन बोलो.
नहीं मानेंगे.
Why does it matter which culture the idea comes from? If it's good, it's good. Doesn't decoloniality assume present-day Indians cannot think for themselves? Exactly. That's my whole problem. Decoloniality does assume that present-day Indians are stupid. Decoloniality does assume it is the most condescending way of looking at people. It thinks that people have no brains, they cannot innovate, and every time, and also that the West is just pure.
Okay. First of all, that is not what decoloniality is saying. Obviously, both the question asker and Kushal Mehra is being a little unfair because he's pissed off. But also, are present-day Indians necessarily इंटेलिजेंट एंड कैन दे नेसेसरीली थिंक फॉर देमसेल्व्स? हमारे आज तक के जो डिवाउट हिंदूज थे, अभी भी बहुत लोग जो है जो कि डिवाउटली हिंदूज होके तृणमूल को, सीपीएम को, नेहरू को पूजा करते हैं, वोट देते हैं, ये लोग क्या दे थिंकिंग फॉर देमसेल्व्स? या फिर अचानक हम नेशनलिस्ट बन के हम बोले कि नहीं नहीं हमारा सोसाइटी इतना अच्छा है कि हम तो हमेशा वी थिंक फॉर देमसेल्व्स, वी आर नॉट इन्फ्लुएंस्ड बाय एनी बैड आइडियाज? ऐसा तो नहीं है भाई. शीप जो है, एनिमल शीप, वो शीप हर सोसाइटी में है, बड़े बड़े.
Or unadulterated evil. That also is the underlying assumption. मुझे कुछ समझ ही नहीं आ रहा है क्वेश्चन. Isn't Latin American decoloniality different from Indic one? Mignolo too has said the same because native culture is still thriving in India.
Yeah.
अरे तो क्या है इंडियन? रैशनल होना नहीं है इंडियन. यूनिफॉर्मिटी सीख करना नहीं है इंडियन.
नो.
सब्जेक्टिविस्ट और रिलेटिविस्ट.
नो. अरे कुशल मेहरा is getting this wrong. What is Indian, but Kushal Mehra is saying people usually say rationality is non-Indian, etc. No, the argument is a little one step more nuanced than that. That when decolonialists are not the dumb fucks, the non-dumb fuck decoloniality वाले जब बोल रहे हैं कि rationality is western, they mean ये वेस्ट ने बोला है कि रैशनलिटी के अंदर जो जो चीज़ें होते हैं ये सिर्फ वेस्ट में ही होता है, तुम सैवेजेस को आता नहीं है, तो इसलिए हम वो टर्म डिस्कार्ड कर रहे हैं, मगर रैशनलिटी तो हमको भी ज़रूरत है. और द कॉन्वर्स इज ऑल्सो एप्लीकेबल. वी कैन से दैट नो, रैशनलिटी इज आवर्स एज वेल. You were mistakenly claiming it to be yours. So rationality is not western. No one is saying it. No sane decolonial theorist is saying it. They are saying West has been saying that rationality is ours. So we are saying तो तुम रहो अपने rationality के साथ, हम अपना rationality खुद बना लेंगे.
होना ये है इंडियन. क्या है कोई नहीं बताता, क्या नहीं है सब बताते रहते हैं. क्या है वो तो बता दो. What should be the right-wing Hindu approach against the colonial ideas in Islamism, if not decoloniality? Use the scout mindset, like Julia Galef said. What is true is true, what is false is false. Who gives a shit where it comes from? Tomorrow, if some idea comes from, let's say, Saudi Arabia for a change.
This is a fair argument in theory, but then why have any social science, any liberal arts education at all? Then he is saying that there is no reason to study anything other than STEM fields. Okay, there's no point of his YouTube channel even. कोई थ्योरी डिस्कस नहीं कर सकते, कोई फिलोसॉफी नहीं डिस्कस करने का कोई फायदा नहीं है. ट्रूथ है जो है, ट्रूथ एक आ गया है सामने, ट्रूथ देख लिया है हमने.
चेंज जो कि होने के चांसेस बहुत कम है. ये इज व्हाट इट इज. तो मतलब क्या मजाक लगा के रखा है आप लोग? मतलब क्या बोलें यार, समझ के बाहर है. The worldviews are correct, then coloniality is in itself an accepted ideology. Is the idea of decoloniality just to somehow claim colony itself was morally and ethically superior to colonizers and colonial power was pure evil? I don't know. You'll have to ask them. They seem to have too many confusions. There is no clarity. And एक और मेरे को क्वेश्चन पूछना है. ठीक है, तो why do you only want to go to certain period of time in the history of humanity? Why not, post-agricultural societies, as per the current evidence, is only 14,000 years old. The earliest advent of agriculture and the evidence of agriculture in India independently on its own, as per the latest Aki Gadi excavations, is 9,000 years. ठीक है, तो अगर ये भी करना है तो फिर यार हंटर गैदरर सोसाइटी के पास ही चले जाओ ना.
Because the agricultural society did not colonize us. Arey, this is all about colonization and resistance to colonization, or the thinking processes left behind by colonizers. If any agricultural society colonized us, then we would have to think about that. But they didn't. We were doing agricultural activities on our own.
ना ये आपको यही क्यों करना है? आप गोइंग ऑल द वे टू द पास्ट जाना तो हंटर गैदरर क्यों नहीं बन जाते सारे के
This
सारे?
is not about going to the past. This is about eliminating as much as possible, the colonial thought processes left behind, because they were bad, because they put our theories in the back seat, because they claim that everything we have come up with is bad, except आध्यात्मिकता.
क्यों नहीं बनते हो? वो तो नहीं बनना चाहते. डीकोलोनाइज ही करना है तो इवन एग्रीकल्चर के बाद जो आपको ये सब चीजें आई हैं,
No, decolonization is not about historical chronology. Decolonization is about decolonization.
कोलोनियलिटी है भाई. एकदम नेचुरल स्टेट में जाओ ना, खुले सांड के जैसे घूमना. एग्रीकल्चर बाहर मस्त में टटी करना, खुले खेतों में. खेत नहीं, सॉरी, खेत भी कॉलोनियल है क्योंकि वो भी एग्रीकल्चर से आया है.
अरे
सो यू नो, जंगल में टटी करना. ये देखो, who says धार्मिक point of view is not rational? Decoloniality says rationality is western. पढ़ लो. भाई मैंने उसकी बुक 3 बार पढ़ी है. अब मैं उसके बुक के कोर्स निकाल के अगर पढ़ना शुरू हो गया ना तो फिर बहुत टाइम लग जाएगा. और कोई क्वेश्चन है? नहीं है भैया.
तो बाकी का यहाँ पे क्या है?
वेयरिंग अ साड़ी इज आल्सो कोलोनियलिटी. पता नहीं, वो तो डीकोलोनियलिटी वालों को पूछो यार, क्योंकि साड़ी भी तो आपने एक सर्टेन नॉर्म इंपोज किया है ना हंटर गैदरर्स के ऊपर. तो आप तो ओरिजिनल स्टेट में हंटर गैदरर थे ना.
इसलिए तो वो हमारा मतलब हाइब्रिड फ्यूचर इम्पोर्टेंट है, क्योंकि आइडियल डीकोलोनियल सोसाइटी में तो हमको तो अभी कौनचिका में वापस जाना पड़ेगा. साड़ी वाड़ी कवर्ड अप चीज़ें तो नहीं है. हमको कवर अप करना पड़ा क्योंकि जब इन्वेडर्स आए वो महिलाओं को ऐसे देखते थे, तो उसके लिए हमको चेंज करना पड़ा. तो अब कौनचिका में जाएंगे तो बहुत सारे ट्रैड लोग ही बोलेंगे कि नहीं, ये तो मतलब तुम इतना स्किन शो काहे कर रहे हो. तो हर जगह पे ही प्रॉब्लम्स है कॉन्वर्सेशन में. कोई भी चीज़ हम लॉजिकल कंक्लूजन में नहीं ले जा सकते. अब अगर मैजिकली पूरा का पूरा सोसाइटी का व्यू टुवर्ड्स द वुमेन्स बॉडी चेंजेस, देन वी कैन गो बैक टू कौनचिका
ना. तो व्हाई डोंट यू गो बैक टू द ओरिजिनल स्टेट ऑफ हंटर गैदरर? उस पे क्यों नहीं जा रहे हो? तो सारी भी कोलोनियलिटी हुई मेरे हिसाब से. तो what are my views on Aryan invasion theory? I think there is very little evidence, and population genetics does not prove anything in my view, because and I've given this explanation multiple times. So how to do these civilizational ideas reconcile in the long run? What kind of structure would work? I don't know. It's a very simple thing. For me, rationality is not a problem. So I just use my brains and first principles. I use the scientific framework and I do it. You should ask the people who say rationality is a Western construct. You don't need to ask me. I am fine with rationality. The one who are not needs to answer this. I'm fine. So फिर coloniality क्या है? It's very simple. As per decoloniality, people who have come in and colonized native lands are the colonizers. So in the case of India, as per the current decolonial,
Shaptarshi is asking, also is decoloniality more of a resistance to Abrahamic universalism, right? Yes, but because it was done through colonialism, मतलब Abrahamic जो aspect है, while resisting their universalism, that is just a side effect, a side problem. वो अगर मतलब कोई और रिलीजन का भी होता तब भी रेजिस्ट करना पड़ता. प्रॉब्लम है कि उन्होंने कॉलोनाइज किया, अपना कल्चर को सुप्रीम बता दिया और हमारा कल्चर को सैवेज बना दिया. वो प्रॉब्लम है. तो एब्राहमिज्म इज अ सेकेंडरी एस्पेक्ट. मेन प्रॉब्लम इज कॉलोनाइजेशन.
case, it is only the British to the West and Islam and Muslims. But here's the problem. You will take it till here. The subaltern people who have faced oppression will take it all the way back. And they will say, those are also the colonizers. And they believe in the Aryan invasion and Aryan migration. You may not.
And their belief does not matter jack shit, because we have scientific evidence showing that colonization did not happen before Islamic invaders.
So my question to you, using decoloniality and decolonial ethics, is who are you to stop their narratives in the pluriverse where they believe you are also a colonizer?
Science. Science that is provable by 5 senses, that science tells me no colonization happened by any imaginary Aryans.
That is my question to you. Who are you to decide for them? Decoloniality says in the pluriverse, there are multiple ideas simultaneously happening and people are kind of negotiating with each other. So if there is a scheduled tribe that believes that you from a particular jati are a colonizer because you came and oppressed them and oppressed and put, I don't think so, but they will. And you put your Brahminical identity on them or Brahminism on them, are you willing to concede that that is also a legitimate view using your decolonial lens? और there you will draw a line and full stop and say नहीं ये थोड़ी ना allowed है, ये तो cheating हो जाएगा.
हाँ, इसको इस आर्ग्यूमेंट को थोड़ा सा हम सीरियसली ले भी सकते हैं. इवन देन द काउंटर आर्ग्यूमेंट कुड बी, इफ आई एम इमेजिनरीली डिबेटिंग a tribal person, let's say, so-called tribal person whose ancestors were probably kings here and there a few centuries back. But then I would argue that since I have not asked you to quit your identity, your cultural beliefs completely, I have simply accommodated your beliefs into my pantheon. Therefore, I am not your enemy. Nor have I actually colonized and caused your genocide, etc.
Are you willing to accept that? I don't. I believe oppression also can be objectively understood. There are clear cases of objectively oppressed people. So yes, Islam was an oppressor in India. The British were oppressors in India. And yes, the caste hierarchy in India did lead to oppression.
Yeah.
I don't need to deny any of that.
Caste hierarchy led to oppression, but that is not colonization. We are not talking about any and every kind of colonization. तो अब मैं बोल सकता हूँ कि मैं मेटल हेड हूँ और मुझे मेन स्ट्रीम बॉलीवुड म्यूजिक का ऑपरेशन फेस करना पड़ा है. अरे हर ऑपरेशन का बात यहाँ पे नहीं हो रहा है. यहाँ पे सिर्फ ऑपरेशन दैट हैपेंड बिकॉज ऑफ colonization उसका बात हो रहा है.
But the sole aim of a decolonialist is to use the word salad and mental gymnastics to deny the one problem of India, which is internal to the Hindu society, that is casteism. And they have found a perfect excuse in saying, this is a British narrative, these are the things. Now, yes, there are genuine cases where the Britishers did create caste out of their ass. They did not do those things. But that does not deny that there was oppression of certain jatis in India. That is a truth. That is a fact. You cannot deny that. You can use decoloniality to conveniently deny it. But then, and no wonder decoloniality will hate RSS. No wonder decoloniality will hate Hindutva. No wonder decoloniality will hate Savarkar. Because all these people were reformists and modernists who wanted to destroy the hierarchical Jati Varna system, which is the bane of Hindu society, which has divided Hindu society. No wonder these people hate them. Because they fight against the ills of their own society while they fight against Western imperialism and Islamism. The fight of Hindutva is three-pronged. Internal, which is Jati Varna and modernizing our own people. External, against Western imperialism and Islamofascism. But with decoloniality, they only focus about two. Look what happens in India. So there are two kinds of relativists and subjectivists in India. And let me give you the example of Ambedkar. The relativists, whether it's a post-colonial theorist or the postmodernists in the left, they will selectively quote Ambedkar and only share Ambedkar's views on Hinduism and ignore Ambedkar's views on Islam completely. The decolonialists, on the other hand, will quote Ambedkar in totality when it comes to his views on Islam. And the moment Ambedkar is quoted on Hinduism, they will say Ambedkar is colonized. But he's only colonized when he's criticizing Hinduism. He's absolutely decolonial when he's criticizing Islam. Similarly, with the left, Ambedkar is absolutely right when he's criticizing Hinduism. He's absolutely wrong when he's criticizing Islam. What a convenient epistemology. Why? Because when you are a subjectivist or a relativist, this is what you do. But when you're an objectivist, you can clearly say, yes, Islam has a bad record in India and Islam has certain problems at the religious level. Similarly, Hinduism also has a bad record and Hinduism did some bad things. And it's so easy. But
I think he is overrating the dhabba of objectivity a little, because this is what he was pointing out. That is a question about honesty and dishonesty. Honest scholars versus dishonest scholars. And there can be dishonest scholars in the world of objectivity as well. क्योंकि objectivity के नाम पे आज तक बहुत कौमी भी घूमते हैं एकेडमिया में. वो भी बोलते हैं मैं तो ऑब्जेक्टिव ट्रूथ की बात कर रहा हूँ. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि ऑब्जेक्टिव कोई अगर क्लेम कर दे खुद को तब वो बड़ा मतलब भगवान बन गया. ऐसा नहीं है. तो अभिनव, कैन यू आर आस्किंग व्हाट बुक टू रीड? आई वुड से इंडिया दैट इज भारत, फर्स्ट एंड फॉरमोस्ट. जय साई दीपक्स फर्स्ट बुक. But read it multiple times. Read it with a notebook. You have to put in proper time and effort in reading that book. Terminology सब नया होगा, and especially if you're not from a liberal arts background, तुम्हारा दिमाग का भोसड़ा बनने वाला है. ठीक है, तो बहुत सारे टर्म्स गूगल करने वाले पढ़ेंगे. बहुत सारे टर्म्स का विकिपीडिया में उसका थोड़ा एक्सप्लेनेशन, थोड़ा हिस्ट्री भी समझना पड़ेगा, जो समझ में नहीं आएगा. फिर एनालाइज करके तुम खुद लिख के कंपेयर करो कुछ और चीज़ों के साथ जिसके साथ तुम रिलेट कर पा रहे हो. ऐसे थोड़ा इंटरैक्टिव वे से ये बुक पढ़ना होगा. ये कैजुअल रीडिंग में नहीं होगा.
When you are, someone who does not like objective standards, you will indulge in these things. Cannibalism and human sacrifice can be justified. क्या पता, वो तो जिनको justify करना है उनको पूछो. What do you think about Rajiv Malhotra's views on decoloniality? I don't even know what his views on decoloniality are.
है क्या व्यू?
Indian decolonialists do not deny the caste experiences. How do you know that? Have they openly condemned the oppression of castes? Have you seen what they write? Yes, I have. I have read his book. He is not a theoretician. You know what the problem with all of you is? You have not read his book because you think he's a theoretician of decoloniality. He is not a theoretician. The theoreticians are Mignolo, Jano, Catherine Walsh. They are theoreticians. He's not a theoretician. He's just using some points of it and quoting these people in his book. And he's saying, maybe we should do that. It is because you people have not read his book that you keep saying these things. That is your problem, not mine.
जैसा दीपक वुड आर्ग्यू दैट वैसे तो ये थ्योरी का ज़रूरत भी नहीं है. लाइक रॉजर स्क्रूटन यूज्ड टू से और डगलस मरी, आई फॉरगॉट, who is a conservative intellectual? What is the difference between a conservative intellectual and a leftist progressive intellectual? A conservative intellectual's job is to articulate what the common masses can't, what they believe anyway, what they know to be common sense in their lives. Articulating that in the world of academia and theories, that is the job of a conservative. So J. Deepak was saying that exact same thing when he met us in South City Mall in Kolkata in the book signing event. He was saying that अरे वैसे गांव के लोगों को तो ये थ्योरी ज़रूरत नहीं है. ये थ्योरी मैं उनका कोट करके मैंने अपना बुक लिखा है टू शो दैट सी, तुम जिन लोगों को तुम कौमी लोग जिन लोगों को भगवान मानते हो, जो थ्योरीज को तुम पूजते हो, वो थ्योरी के बेसिस पे ही आई कैन जस्टिफाई हिंदुत्व एंड द अवेकनिंग ऑफ हिंदू कॉन्शियसनेस. ये तुम्हारे लिए है, ये हमारे लिए है ही नहीं. दैट इज द आर्ग्यूमेंट. सो इन अ वे कुशल इज राइट, इन अ वे ही इज रॉन्ग. So he's using those theories to point out that, see, in that way this is applicable. So even now, J. Deepak doesn't go around saying that I am here just as a decolonial scholar or something. Okay, he was basically giving platform to the ideas of decoloniality. So decoloniality, he has moved on from decoloniality as far as I've understood J. Deepak.
All right, so I guess all the questions are done. Let me see anything on Twitter. Do this, but oh well. You know, a lot of people assume आपने ये किया है, आपने वो किया है. Oh well. I tried my best to avoid it. नोट्स थे जो मैं बोलते हो ना, मैंने JSD की बुक नहीं पढ़ी, ठीक है. ये 13 पेज के नोट्स थे जो मैंने बना के रखे हैं उसकी बुक के ऊपर. 13 पेज हैं, 13 पेज के नोट्स हैं. मैं शेयर नहीं करने वाला हूँ, ना मुझे शेयर करने की जरूरत है. मैंने उसकी बुक 3 बार पढ़ी क्योंकि मैं उसकी इतनी रिस्पेक्ट करता हूँ. बिकॉज आई रिस्पेक्ट हिम, आई रेड इट अगेन एंड अगेन एंड अगेन. Otherwise, I would have dismissed it in one casual reading. It is only because I respected him, because we have a past, that I read it again. And I still respect him. He's a great speaker and a very good addition to the discourse. I just disagree with him on this one. And I created this file way before. I created it last year when I read his book. So, you know, to everybody who says that I have not read his book, first of all, I don't know how to say it. आप गधे हो. और हाँ, मैं फुल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी से कह रहा हूँ कि आप गधे हो, क्योंकि आपने खुद ने उसकी पुस्तक नहीं पढ़ी है. आपको लगता है वो थियरेटिशियन है, वो थियरेटिशियन नहीं है. उसने ये थियरी को यूज किया है अपने तरीके से प्रेजेंट करने के लिए, बट ही हैज नॉट प्रेजेंटेड अ न्यू हाइपोथेसिस एनीवेयर इन द बुक. ही हैज जस्ट मेड स्टेटमेंट्स एंड kudos
new those his statements are the kind of, you could argue it's a new hypothesis, because he's saying that, see, by that logic this is applicable in India, whereas the NRI Hindu Qawmi academics who are also decolonial scholars, they are saying it's not applicable here. It's not like if it was not a new original research or hypothesis that J. Deepak presented, there would be a consensus that yes, obviously decoloniality is Hindutva. Because there is a disagreement among decolonial scholars on whether decoloniality can be used to justify Hindutva or not. Therefore, one could argue that yes, J. Deepak actually did original research and made up his and came up with his own hypothesis that decoloniality in fact is Hindutva in the Indian context. That is a very original hypothesis because not everyone agrees with him.
to him. Congratulations to him for having a bestseller. I wish he sells 2 million copies. I wish him nothing but the best. But stop accusing me of things when you, the moron, doesn't read it yourself. I actually did the effort. But my critique of decoloniality is not based on JSD's book because he's not a theoretician. My critique of decoloniality is based on what the decoloniality folks have written themselves. That's why I said, when I started, I told you guys कि कौन है ये लोग जिन्होंने
this is what I disagree with when it comes to decoloniality. Decoloniality is not a religion, and the so-called decolonial scholars of the West are not the Brahmins of this religion. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि उनको ही उनका प्राइमरी सोर्स ही हमको पढ़ना पड़ेगा.
लिखा हुआ है. मैंने आपको पहले से कहा, तो आपको अगर डिकोलोनियलिटी को पढ़ना है, अनिबाल कुजानो को पढ़ो, वाल्टर मिग्नोलो को पढ़ो, एनरिक डोसल को पढ़ो, रेमोन रॉसफुगोल को पढ़ो, संतियागो कास्ट्रो गोमेज को पढ़ो, उनको पढ़ो, उनकी आइडियाज को पढ़ो, और वो किनको रेफर करते हैं उनकी रेफरेंसेस चेक करो, उनकी बिब्लियोग्राफी चेक करो, वहां पे पता चलेगा वो कितनी बार फुको को मेंशन करते हैं, कितनी बार डेरिडा को करते हैं, कितनी बार साइड को करते हैं.
And J. Deepak has kind of been inspired by that and has given his own theory here. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel and go read Walter D. Mignolo again. Okay, this is one sort of you could call it a primary source fallacy. This happens in the context of music as well. There is a famous hilarious quote saying that I don't make music anymore, I just breed goats now. Okay, तो जोक क्या है कि तुम म्यूजिक सॉफ्टवेयर क्यों यूज करते हो? ओके, सॉफ्टवेयर से म्यूजिक क्यों बनाते हो? कीबोर्ड में तुम पियानो, ड्रम्स, वायलिन, सितार सब सिंथेसाइजर में क्यों बजाते हो? ओरिजिनल यूज़ करो. तो कोई बोल सकता है कि अच्छा मैं इलेक्ट्रिक गिटार क्यों यूज़ कर रहा हूँ, उसमें इलेक्ट्रिसिटी नेचुरल नहीं है जो स्पीकर यूज़ हो रहा है, क्यों एकॉस्टिक गिटार यूज़ करो. ओके, तो हम एकॉस्टिक गिटार क्यों यूज़ करें? किसी ने और ने बना के दे दिया हमको सितार गिटार, वो क्यों यूज़ करें? खुद बनाओ, इतना ओरिजिनलिटी चाहिए तो. अच्छा, खुद बनाने के चक्कर में अब हम चमड़े का कोई इंस्ट्रूमेंट भी यूज़ ना करें, अब हम गोट ब्रीड करते हैं. एकदम सीधा, मैं गोट ब्रीड करूँगा, उसका चमड़ी उधेड़ के मैं इंस्ट्रूमेंट बनाऊँगा, वो बजाऊँगा, वो रिकॉर्ड करवाऊँगा, वो रिलीज़ करूँगा. तो हम अब म्यूज़िक ना बना के हम गोट ब्रीडिंग करें और पेड़ पौधे उगाए, ताकि एकदम ओरिजिनल पूरा प्राइमरी सोर्स के साथ एकदम हमारा क्रिएटिविटी एसोसिएटेड हो. वैसा नहीं है. फालतू में व्हील रीइन्वेंट करके टाइम वेस्ट नहीं करना चाहिए.
आपको तब पता चलेगा वो क्या कर रहे हैं. आपको पढ़ना है, आप बुक पढ़ लो उनकी ऑन डीकोलोनियलिटी, और भी सारी बुक्स हैं, बहुत सारी बुक्स हैं. तो आप अपने आप को ये बोलो, इट डजंट मैटर. आप लोग एक किताब से शादी करके बैठ गए हो, उससे कुछ नहीं होता. एक सब्जेक्ट को पढ़ने के लिए उसको बहुत टाइम लगता है. सो प्लीज गेट आउट ऑफ दिस वर्ल्ड व्यू.
This I would agree. This is why I'm saying that I'm not treating decoloniality as my religion. I have no a special love for decoloniality. I'm just interested in how much J. Deepak is right in applying decoloniality to Hindutva or India, and how much Kushal is right or wrong while criticizing decoloniality. Okay, I'm not going to read anything other than India, that is Bharat, when it comes to decoloniality as well, because especially the primary sources are all mainly Marxist, Foucauldian, etc. But here I agree with Kushal Mehra very much, because he's saying that don't read just one book on one topic. Like so many people keeps telling me, just read that one particular book by that one guy and you'll understand this entire concept. वैसा नहीं होता है. एक बुक से अगर कोई चीज़ का तुम्हारा सब आर्ग्यूमेंट एक बुक में है, तो इसका मतलब है कि वो आर्ग्यूमेंट उतना स्ट्रांग नहीं है. नहीं तो और कोई भी और बहुत से लोग वो आर्ग्यूमेंट लेके बहुत सारे बुक लिखते हैं.
I know most of you have not read his book, which is why you keep citing his book, and his book will give you no answer. The answers lie in the primary sources of decoloniality. I once again repeat, if you want to read, I will give you 4 names. Start with this: On Decoloniality, Concepts, Analytics and Praxis by Catherine Walsh and Walter D. Mignolo. This is number 1. Then you can read a paper which is by Paul Anthony Chambers, which is called Epistemology and Domination, Problems with the Coloniality of Knowledge, Thesis in Latin American Decolonial Theory. This is an analysis of Latin American decolonial theory. This paper gets into how they misrepresent Descartes or Descartes' ideas, how Descartes says X, but they actually twist Descartes. A lot of it, 4 principles that they use, he goes into that. Then you can also use this paper, which was by Dr. Robin Dunford, which is toward a decolonial global ethics. So how would a decolonial global ethical world look like? And you know, I love this paper. The author is so humble. When they write this paper, they say this is not the final answer, which is what good scholars do. Robin Dunford does that. He's a good scholar. I have nothing against Robin Dunford. I have problems with half-baked idiots on social media who don't read anything and then form opinions. You can also read Towards the Decolonial Narrative Ethics by Hele Haker or Haker. I don't know how to pronounce. You can start with these papers. These papers itself will be like 400, 500 pages of reading. You talk big, read these 500 pages. Then you can come and challenge me. I'll be happy to hear you out. But you don't read 3 pages. You don't read 3 pages and talk big. That is not how it's done. So make yourself qualified first to even understand the subject, and then come and yap. You may love this book or this concept. But the point is very simple. It makes no sense. And if that worldview is taken to its T, this is what happens, which the questions I asked.
It does not need to be taken to its T. That is what I'm saying.
And you cannot create a fault line or an arbitrary stopping. Let's say, we are decolonizing history. So one group will say we should only decolonize our history till the British. Another group will say we will only decolonize history till the Muslims. But why not before that? Why not subaltern renditions of history? Why not folk renditions of history? Why not jati-based?
Because absolutely no proof. कुछ proof तो होना चाहिए. Folk renditions of history से कोई problem नहीं है भाई मुझे.
Renditions of history. But the point is, if there are so many renditions of history, what is the history of India then? What are you going to...
Nothing. हिस्ट्री इज अ लिटिल ओवररेटेड. ओके, हिस्ट्री का पॉइंट क्या है यही बहुत लोगों को ना समझ में नहीं आता है, स्पेशली हिस्ट्री स्कॉलर्स को. हिस्ट्री का मतलब ही ये है कि स्कूल लेवल में एटलीस्ट हिस्ट्री का पॉइंट ही ये है ओनली एंड ओनली फकिंग कल्चरल एंड इंडियन यूनिटी, नेशनल यूनिटी, कोहिजन, कल्चरल प्राइड. No one should come out of the school thinking my ancestors were dumb fucks. That includes Muslims. तो हमारा आज तक का क्या प्रॉब्लम था? हिंदुओं को बोला जा रहा है कि तुम्हारे एंसेस्टर्स चूतिए थे, मुस्लिम्स के एंसेस्टर्स कितने बड़े थे, कितने बढ़िया थे. अब हम ये नहीं पढ़ा सकते कि मुस्लिम्स के एंसेस्टर्स सब भोसड़ी वाले थे और हमारे एंसेस्टर्स सब बढ़िया थे, क्योंकि हमारा इतना बड़ा मुस्लिम पॉपुलेशन है. वो अगर अब कल्चरल प्राइड में से लेफ्ट आउट हो जाए तो उनको लेके हम क्या करेंगे? तो आइदर दे ऑल ऑफ देम हैव टू बी डन घर वापसी, और वी कैन से दैट देयर वर सो मेनी गुड मुस्लिम्स एज वेल लाइक दारा शिको, A.R. रहमान एटसेट्रा. देयर आर गुड मुस्लिम्स टू लुक अप टू. तो दैट नीड्स टू बी टॉट. देयर इज नो अदर फकिंग पॉइंट ऑफ हिस्ट्री अदर देन इनकल्केटिंग कल्चरल प्राइड, नेशनल प्राइड इन द स्कूल लेवल. उसके ऊपर का जो हिस्ट्री है वहाँ पे अलग अलग तुम फील्ड चूज करके वहाँ पे पढ़ो. तुम ग्रेजुएशन, मास्टर्स, PhD, स्कॉलरली अप्रोच लेके जो करना है, जो पढ़ना है पढ़ो.
To teach your children. So, or are you going to tell me every jati in India will have their own version of history? And because they will have their own version of history, there is no real right or wrong in the historical sense. So, if one jati will say this version of history is right and that is right according to me, another jati will say this version of history is right and that is right according to me.
Yeah.
Do you understand what kind of a world you're creating? And then, actually, a viewer did ask a very good question. Then what's the point of having a nation state itself? Or what is the point of calling yourself a civilizational state itself? These things make no sense.
No, that is the point of a discussion. That is the point of a society that debates. Our Indians are by default argumentative. We will argue amongst each other, but nation state यही रहेगा.
At all. Or these are just nice words that I drop without understanding the theoretical underpinnings of what myself am I trying to promote. Only people with lack of theoretical clarity would say things like that. That's all it is. I may not opine on many things. Like on foreign policy issues, I try to stay silent. मुझे नहीं पता यूक्रेन और रशिया में क्या हो रहा है. But this subject I do understand. This subject I do read. And it was just something because I happen to be from a philosophy background. और course material में ये चीजें पढ़ाई जाती थी आपको. और हम पढ़ते थे. That's all it is. And just because I happen to break your heart because you have this romanticized version of the past, I could care less. You can keep on romanticizing your past.
Yeah. पास्ट को रोमांटिसाइज करना स्कूल लेवल में ज़रूरी है, मगर डीकोलोनियलिटी को लेकर रोमांटिसाइजेशन ज़रूरत नहीं है.
I don't suffer from any golden age syndrome. To me, the history of humanity is small incremental steps where we keep getting better and better. And
yes, that Kushal Mehra has the luxury of saying because he's 38 years old, not when you are 12 years old, 13 years old.
Better and better. And let me tell you, 100 years down the line, the human beings then, if this is the trajectory, they'll be far better than us also.
Yeah.
Because one of the biggest things we are not going to realize, maybe sometime in the future we'll realize, is because we eventually lab meat or whatever those options are will come across, and then those human beings will look at us at that time and tell us, oh my God, these people would kill animals to satiate themselves.
Yeah.
These things will come. And those human beings will be far better than us. And I'm fine with it. I don't need to go back to some romanticized past to feel good about myself. This is the best time to be alive as per the current evidence in my view. And yes, the future might be better. There will be temporary blips that will be going down and up, just like what's happening in Ukraine right now. But that's a temporary blip if you look at a 1,000-year curve. That's nothing but a temporary blip. And when you judge the story of humanity, at least post-agricultural societies, these incidents are blips. And they will be taking us somewhere. That's my whole point. Nor am I saying that there is nothing that we can catch on to an identity. Eventually, these ideas and identities are all fictions. And we need some fiction or the other to tie ourselves together. But then my question...
Yes, bhai, yes. And especially for kids. बच्चों के लिए वही ज़रूरत है, which you are opposing as a 38-year-old.
Is that we do need fictions to tie ourselves together. Then what is the fiction that we are going to tie each other as a larger landmass that is India? If all we are is a bunch of jati stories where different groups are interacting with each other, and then, why even have चलो ठीक है, यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड नहीं करना. Then why even have a Hindu code bill? Then we should have individual jati-based code bills, na? You know, the Leva Patels will have one code bill, the Karwa Patels will have one code bill, the Khatris will have one code bill, the Bedi Khatris will have another code bill, the Jat Sikhs will have another code bill, the Ravidasiyas will have another code bill. Everybody have their own code bill, na?
Yeah, that is not
Why
fair.
stop at the Hindu code bill also? Reverse engineering करते जाओ, पीछे जाते जाओ,
Yeah.
पीछे जाते जाओ. My question is, कहाँ आप line draw करोगे? किधर तो draw करोगे ना? So it is just a matter of perception, and do not assume. I could be wrong. I don't think I am on this one, but I could be wrong, and I'm open to be corrected. But the least you can do, who questions me, is at least जाके पढ़ लो यार थोड़ा. Don't insult my intelligence by not even reading 2 pages and then coming and waxing eloquent on the live stream. I normally am very humble about many issues, but on this I am not, because I know what I'm talking about and I had prepared myself. I am giving you theoretical sources. I am giving you direct references. To say just one book, अरे वही book के बाद, अरे उस book में कुछ आंसर ही नहीं है भाई, उस book में कोई आंसर नहीं है. To use, and unfortunately I feel bad for JSD, because poor guy, उसने तो अपनी book किसी और reason के लिए लिखी है, हर आदमी उसको हर चीज में पेलते जाता है, उसकी कोई गलती ही नहीं है. Basically,
this is a fair point actually. That J. Deepak was merely saying that तुम लोग इतना decoloniality को लेके फुदकते हो, ये लो decoloniality. इससे तो मुझे दिख रहा है कि decoloniality justifies हिंदुत्व. He is not married to decoloniality. People who are fans of JSD, they are saying that now decoloniality is the best fucking thing ever, without realizing that not everything in decoloniality is in favor of India or Hinduism.
वो तो कुछ कर नहीं रहा है, यहाँ पे उसके फैन क्लब पागल हुए पड़े हैं. But it's okay. I think the same thing might be happening with people who support me.
Yeah.
But at least don't behave like that with him if you support me, because I have nothing against him.
True.
But the point is that don't accuse people of things that you yourself are not capable of. I have stated my point. I will once again say, you guys have no locus standi on this subject. Because if all of you came on the screen and I'd ask you 5 questions, you will fail. My question to all of you in the end is very simple. If you are nothing but a bunch of groups interacting with each other, you need to answer fundamental questions that why then the nation state is valid, why the civilizational state is valid, why not have civil laws on the basis of every single jati or every single pantha, whatever you want to call it. Why not have LGBT civil laws, trans civil laws? Everybody has different civil laws. If you don't answer these questions, and when you are using theoretical frameworks of decoloniality, which categorically states this is the reality, I am sorry. You are not theoretically sound. You can faff all you want, and that's about it. I'll end today's discussion here because I knew the moment I will expose decoloniality, you guys will have ants in your pants. And it's okay. For me, that doesn't matter. But yes, always remember, these things will come and go. And Hindutva is here to stay. Hindutva is modernity. It is Hindu modernity. It is going to waltz over every single idea, including decoloniality. It will win in the end. It will win politically. It will win socially. And I can only say I will celebrate every moment of it. I will never support decoloniality in this avatar. If they come up with a new avatar, fine. And I will end today's discussion over here. But remember that, okay, somebody has said, they asked the super chat, kya hai bhai chat? Kahan hai? They are trying to build reality theoreticians. You can, maybe, you could not find it. Who are Indic decoloniality theoreticians? You can, maybe, you can start with Balagangadhara, Vishwa Adluri, Joydeep Bagchi. They are trying to build those theories. So you can start with them. Not that they are classical decolonial theorists, but I think Balagangadhara would be a good starting point if you want to. The Heathen in His Blindness and stuff like that. That was his book. There was this another book that had come. I don't want to leave the screen. I forgot the name. Yaar, kya naam tha uska book? I think Balagangadhar ji has written another book. So Vishwa Adluri ji की book है Ne Science है. फिर उनका एक paper था on एक और था यार, मैं नेक्स्ट बुक का नाम भूल गया हूं. आई एम वेरी बैड विद नेम्स. विश्वा अडलूरी जी ने जॉयदीप बागची के साथ बुक लिखी थी. सो एनीवेज,
M. Shastri, yeah, man. That is the problem. That is what Kushal Mehra I knows. I don't know why when it comes to just this thing, maybe he finds too many things wrong with this theory, and that's why he points out only the problems that can arise out if we apply if we take this to its logical conclusion. But Kushal Mehra, I'm sure knows that no theory needs to be or should be taken to its logical conclusion. I don't think any theory works that way. I don't think any theory works if it's taken to its logical conclusion. Libertarianism, anarcho-capitalism, how is it going to work? अगर तुम और मैं अनार्को कैपिटलिस्ट बन जाए, अगर लेट्स से पूरा का पूरा इंडिया भी अनार्को कैपिटलिस्ट बन जाए, तो क्या अंबानी हमको बचाएगा जब पाकिस्तान बम मारने आएगा? तो नो थ्योरी वर्क्स when it's taken to its full extreme conclusion. Okay, but the society should be as libertarian as possible. Doesn't mean anarcho-capitalism. Radicalism है ही एक चूतिया idea.
I hope that answers your question. I forgot the name of the new book of Balagangadhar ji. एक मिनट रुकिए, मैं Google सर्च कर देता हूँ तो मैं आपको बता देता हूँ. I'm very bad with names. extremely bad. वो एक बुक थी, मैं तो जितनी नाम था उनका यार, सी के राजू थे, ये सब ट्राई कर रहे हैं उसमें। और कौन थे, और ही इज नॉट इनटू, वो बुक उनकी पढ़ी है, और तो कोई पढ़ी नहीं है मैंने। साइंस में जाते हो तो आपको तो बर्बादी कर देंगे ये लोग, घटिया लेफ्ट वाले, आपको जीने ही नहीं देंगे, वो पॉइंट है। तो आप ये अपना एक क्लियर करते हो, सो इट इज़ व्हाट इट इज़। ठीक है, और तो कोई क्वेश्चन तो दिख नहीं रहा मुझे। Decoloniality, decoloniality is against decoloniality. You may not accept it, but it is. Hindutva is against decoloniality. You may not like it. Milap, thanks, Kushal. No offense was intended. I had a genuine question about what you expected, but got a good answer. I'm not offended. I don't get offended easily. But yeah, annoyed because people challenge that. I have not read the book, or I have not read this, or I have not read that. I should not have shown my notes also of JSD's book, but I did. मैंने मेहनत की है, उसके बाद ही बात की है मैंने। चलो, we will end today's session. Once again, thanks a lot for bearing with me. I will highly recommend to buy Walter Mignolo's books, to read those papers. Description में मैंने 4 references दिए हैं, उनको तो पढ़ लो, वो पक्का पढ़ना। मगर मैं क्लियर शब्दों में कह रहा हूँ, ही इज नॉट अ डीकोलोनियल थियरिस्ट, सो थियरेटिकल वैल्यू उसमें से नहीं मिलेगी। आपको थियरेटिकल वैल्यू समझनी है तो आपको मिग्नोलो पढ़ना पड़ेगा, और आप उसमें से थियरेटिकल वैल्यू निकाल पाओगे। जिस दिन ये लोग थियरी निकालेंगे इंडिया में इंडियन, तो हम मान लेंगे। अब वो बोलेंगे धार्मिक थियरीज है तो अलग बात है, उसके लिए कॉलोनियलिटी की या डीकोलोनियलिटी का सवाल नहीं आता। वो तो आप कॉलोनाइजर के होते होते भी यूज कर सकते हो, तो वो बात अलग हो गई। अगर कोई नया आएगा तो दे होगा, ठीक है। और प्लीज बिकम अ मेंबर ऑन द पॉडकास्ट और सब्सक्राइब ऑन पेट्रियन।
Okay.
होगा रामायण का 7:30 बजे शुरू होगा। इफ यू आर अ मेंबर यूजुअली।
अरे मेरे मीट को क्या हुआ, रुको भाई। हाँ okay then, we will end our live stream now. Let's see if there's any good comments. This was a great live stream, lots of people joined. Okay, नहीं, वहाँ पे राजपुत्रा मेरा algorithm boost कर रहा है। ठीक है then, thank you for boosting my live stream. No Name is saying that's why I'm saying his video of decoloniality is outstanding. My only one disagree with him is that individualism works on heterogenic society. Individualism is important, not everything. Yeah, nothing works if it's taken to its logical conclusion. That's the only thing. Good night, guys.